that we are meeting on the land of the Muanina people who looked after this country for hundreds of generations. Unfortunately, that group, that community didn't survive colonisation. However, I'd like to acknowledge the contemporary Aboriginal community, the Palawa community, as the custodians of the land of Lutruwita. Thank you. The minutes of our last meeting is 27th of May. Would someone like to move this? Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. It's carried unanimously. Transfer of agenda items. Are there any agenda items that anyone wants to transfer to different spots in the agenda? There being none, we'll move on to communications from the Chair. I don't have any tonight. Item 5 is the notification of council workshops. So these are all, I think, noted in the agenda, but I'll just run through them. That on the 3rd of June we had a workshop around ferries, being a briefing from the Do and Estuary program, and a discussion about the city's advocacy priorities. On Monday the 17th of June we had a workshop to receive the annual plan progress report, to hear about the review of the Aboriginal Commitment Action Plan, to hear from the Stadium 2.0 consortium, and a discussion about a review of the governance structure arrangements. So those were the workshops that we had. Now we will move on to public question time, and I know that we do have two questions from Edwin Johnson, who is here tonight to ask his questions. So I'll invite Edwin up to ask his questions.
Thank you. My name's Edwin Johnston. I'm Chair of the Federation of Greater Hobart Business. I'm just here to ask a question about the proposed bike lanes in Collins Street. The City of Hobart plans to remove 59 parking spaces from Collins Street in the inner CBD to make way for dual bike lanes. Apart from the impact on long-suffering traders in the CBD, taking away so much on-street parking needs to consider people with mobility issues and our ageing population and our inadequate public transport system. Having no accessible parking on Collins Street between Harrington and Murray Street is of major concern. Hobart's inner CBD has become a much safer place over the years, with wider footpaths and less traffic lanes, but this area is still the main business district of the capital city. So, just before I get on to the questions, we are not asking for more parking, we are not advocating for more cars. So my three questions are, number one, why do the proposed changes to Collins Street include only 2 accessible parking bays with none between Harrington and Murray Street? Question 2, why can't the proposal have one northbound lane in Collins Street and one southbound lane in Liverpool Street? And my final question, is the council expecting more traffic congestion and associated emissions in Collins Street due to the combining of traffic lanes at all 3 intersections into one, along with the changes around the centre point car park complex?
Thank you. Thanks, Edwin. And these responses that I'll read out now will be posted to you so you can have access to them. They'll also be on the minutes of our next meeting. So in response to the question about why do the proposed changes to Collins Street include only 2 accessible parking bays with none between Harrington and Murray Street, so the response that's been prepared is that the concept plan that is being out for consultation, although focused on Collins Street, is looking at doubling of the number of accessible parking spaces within the precinct from 2 to 4. While one existing accessible space on Collins Street in the Harrington-Murray Street block will be removed, we are currently investigating a replacement bay within the same block on Murray Street, and additional bays in other locations, either on Collins or surrounds, and seeking feedback on user needs. There is currently 1 accessible parking space between Harrington and Bathurst under the concept plan, This number will increase from 1 to 2 spaces in this block. So that's around the accessible spots. In response to question 2, why can't the proposal have one northbound, I presume you meant bike lane, in Collins Street and one southbound in Liverpool Street? This was looked at a high level at the outset of the concept planning exercise. It was found that similar levels of parking removal would need to occur on Collins Street as the current concept plan, while also adding additional parking removal on Liverpool Street on one side of the road. As such, and along with Collins Street being identified as the principal cycling route for the city by a number of state and local strategic documents, this concept was not looked at in any more detail. And question 3 was, is the council expecting more traffic congestion as a result of the changes? The response to that is initial analysis has shown that there may be minor increases in traffic congestion along Collins Street due to combining traffic lanes. It is anticipated there will be some rerouting of through traffic, which will help alleviate this slight increase. More detailed traffic modelling is currently being done on the above mentioned intersections to confirm this initial analysis. Thank you for your questions, and this will be provided. Okay, are there any other questions that no one else in the public gallery would like to ask any questions? We'll move on to petitions. We have a petition that I think the CEO will read to us.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So we have a petition that's submitted by Thomas Roach, 44 Waterworks Road, Dunern. The subject matter is for the Waterworks Road footpath infrastructure. The petition is calling for the Hobart City Council to upgrade the footpath and roadway along Waterworks Road to improve safety. The total number of signatures to the petition is 141.
Thank you. So that will be taken and...
The appropriate committee.
Yeah, moved to the appropriate committee, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Before I vote on that, can I just clarify, did we have something very similar, a petition? Yeah. Is this the same petition with extra signatures or a different petition on the same topic? Don't know. Okay. Oh, Councillor Coates.
I received that petition being a resident of the Dunern area, so I think it's a new one. Right. It was letterboxed to everyone in the area. Yeah.
Very similar one about 6 months ago. Okay, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Supplementary items, there are none. Item 9 is indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. Are there any items that anyone wishes to indicate a interest in?
The Tas Water.
Yep.
What number is it? Tas
Item
Water.
16.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, there being none, we'll move. So that's one for Alderman Zuko at item 16. So we'll move on to officer reports. Item 10 is the 2024-25 budget estimates and annual plan. There's a number of recommendations there. Would someone like to move those? Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Bloomfield. Discussion on the budget. Anyone like to discuss our annual budget? Any comments? Councillor Dutton.
I have a few questions, Lord Mayor. Question number 1, with regards to the allocation for homeless allocation. I understand that I should have brought this earlier in the workshop, but I did, and I don't see the allocation to this. So my question is through you to the appropriate director. How much is allocated to service providers on the ground in this particular budget for
Homelessness services and support. Sorry, I think you need to go to the microphone or sit at the table. Yeah, probably go to the microphone might be better. Yeah, that's better.
The Director services is $16,800.
How much again? I didn't.
$16,800.
And the follow-up question. So when this was initially set up, what was the allocation budgeted for? And over the years, has it risen, and by how much?
Lord Mayor, I'm not entirely sure of the question.
Okay. When this particular allocation was made towards the homeless providers, what was the initial budget, and which particular year? Is it 2010 or 2020? And what sort of increase has it been put into that? Is it CPI increase or other methodology used?
Mr. Reynolds?
It is a historical allocation, so the allocation the Director quoted a moment ago would have reflected in last year's budget as well. I would have to go back through our records to see when it was initially identified and allocated and how much it has been indexed. We don't have that information in our current budget.
Taking that into consideration, Lord Mayor, I would foreshadow an amendment. 16,800 for service providers for homeless people is quite not the right amount, I think. When you consider the crisis that people go through, I would foreshadow that we increase it to 30,000 for service providers on the ground.
Okay, that's an amendment. We'd need a second for that. Councillor Lohberger. Just to manage things, I might take any comments on that amendment before we move on to any further general discussion about the budget. Councillor Coates.
Look, it's very easy to go, we've got a $180 million budget, let's increase homelessness from a minuscule percentage of that to also a minuscule percentage of that. But I'm just not confident doing that amendment here on the floor. I mean, I could list off 100 community organisations and events and activities that we could just do the funding for. I think the budget ultimately is a process. It's a process where a whole bunch of identified projects and allocations need to go into it, and staff go through that big workshop process with us. It doesn't stop us if there's really good project activities, events, organisations that come to us and need funding. It doesn't prevent us from still doing it. I appreciate the sentiment around why it would be a nice thing, and if it hasn't been indexed or raised or whatever, understanding the provenance of that. But by the flip side, I think there's a huge amount that our council does and can do as an organisation. It's not always just cash in the bank. Sometimes it's our advocacy efforts. Sometimes it's providing donations in kind or space or activity or working with. There are a lot of really effective groups. Obviously Hobart City Mission, Simple Support, all those sort of societies. So, look, it might even be that we can commit to all doing a CEO sleep out or something, and raise the money that way. But I don't want to speak against the intent, but I just think in terms of a budgetary process, at the very end we shouldn't just sort of be going and let's just allocate this budget more and increase that one more, because otherwise the next step will be just everyone will foreshadow a motion to, well, let's spend a bit more in smoking cessation, let's spend a little bit more in in health, or let's spend a little bit more in active transport, let's spend, ultimately the budget that's before us today is an outcome of a pretty big detailed process that we rely on staff to go through and compile for us, and I'm very hesitant to make any sort of last minute changes to it, and just note that this doesn't prevent us from looking to do more work in that space, and if that more work requires funding, we as an organisation can make that decision at that time, and as part of that get report back which talks to the funding implications and how the money is going to be spent. And it sounds like the first part that will come back to us will be that further information about that allocation that's already in there. How did that arrive? Why hasn't that been increased? What's that for, and how's it being spent? And so look, I appreciate very much what Councillor Dutta is trying to do here, but I just think it's sort of like the wrong time, wrong place. Thanks.
Alderman Zuko.
Through you to the appropriate person can answer the question. Do we have budget reviews during the period of time from the time we set the budget to during the year?
Mr. Reynolds?
Through you, Lord Mayor, thank you for the question. We do look at our budgets on a quarterly basis, and there will be opportunities there.
Okay.
Budget amendment.
Lord Mayor, we've gone through a process here. I could get up here and move that we have a increase of 0 to all our ratepayers. We can do a lot of things here on the floor of council. All of it, potentially, some of it could be political, some of it could be for good intentions. The whole thing about it is we've gone through a process. We just sat through an audit meeting with our chairman of the audit panel, and one of the things I actually asked was about services, and I've continually asked that question here in this chamber time and time again. We need to review our services. So it's fantastic to come to the table here tonight, and all of us may have a lot of our own personal items we'd like to sort of bring forward, or look at funding aspects of the city. But we've gone through a process. I don't necessarily like this budget here, but I'm not going to get up and stand here tonight and try and make massive changes. It's gone through a process, and I understand what Alderman Councillor Dutta is trying to do here. But whether it's 30,000, whether it's 3 million, whether it's $1, to my point of view, the process we've gone through that, and if there are changes to be made to the budget, I think it's budget review time. I think we've got to look at what we're doing, how we're doing it, and if it's worthwhile increasing a budget by $1 or $30,000 or $1 million, or reviewing it or changing it and cutting some parts of our budget, we do that at review time. I don't believe tonight, right now, is a time to start adding or taking away from this budget. It's gone through a process. If we don't like it, well, don't vote for it.
Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I take the points made by Councillor Coates and Alderman Zuko, but I must say, as the chair of the Housing and Homelessness Committee, Councillor Dutta has repeatedly spoken about the lack of funding in the area, and while he's brought it to this table tonight, I don't think it's the first time he has raised it. I do think it's an important rise. The amount of need in that area is endless, and I do think we could do with a rise in the budget for it. And I'll make the point that if we do have to do this in the budget review session, that's fine, but I'll be voting for this tonight anyway, because I think it's something we need to do. And I haven't spoken with any other elected members about any amendment like this to the budget. It's not that it's going to open the door, I don't believe. I think this is the only one that I know of at this stage. There might be another one or two, I guess, but yeah, I don't believe it will open the door. But I do take the point of the other two elected members. I mean, I think this is one of those issues where we're all kind of right. But yes, I will be supporting this, and I'll encourage the other members to support it, and if it doesn't get up tonight, I'd encourage them to support it during the review. Thank you.
Alderman Bloomfield.
Increasing allocations to budget areas normally would have a process, and that process would be supplying material justification rather than we just need to spend more in this area. I mean, what services, how are they going to be applied? Is this for increasing Louise Van, or is this for, I don't know, supplying materials? I don't know, none of us know. And as a result, it simply becomes a cash splash rather than a genuine increase and doing the proper governance here, because we have limited funds and there are lots of very important things that we need to be doing. It would have been good to have had this backed up with actual material, actual data in the proper process, like everything else has already been done. And it's like everybody else. It's like, yes, we know there's an issue. We would love to throw money at it, but the time has gone, and it should have been done when we actually had due process, justification, materials and allocations to explain exactly why we wanted the money extra, like any other allocation of monies. So I can't support it as much as I would love to. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Dutta, Purcell, Kitsos, Lohberger, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against?
Zuko, Elliott, Coates, Bloomfield, Kelly, Harvey.
Okay. Further discussion on the budget.
Lord Mayor, I refer to page 13 of the operating grants, and I have a question. And the question is, there is an operating grant refers to the $650,000 for sparkling conversations. Now, my question is, how much was the initial grant given to this project, and is this the balance of that initial project, or is this new funding? Thank you.
Director Edwards, did you want to answer? Or
We believe it's the balance of spark conversations.
so it's the balance.
That is the balance,
Yeah.
yes.
Remaining.
Let's go on the next stage that proceeds.
Through you, Lord Mayor, what document is that?
Councillor Dutta, it's
The supporting documents,
Which one? A, B, C, D, E, F, G?
attachment A, page 13.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion on the budget? Councillor Elliott?
Yes, thank you. I'm pleased to be able to stand here tonight in a much better position than I felt that I was at last year's budget process, so I'm very thankful for that. When it comes to the budget itself, I'm not in the habit of supporting us to be in a position to lose money, given we're budgeting a $1.2 million deficit. But I do have confidence that this will be able to be managed and hopefully bring us back to a surplus. I think there's strategies in hand to make sure that happens. I'm also supportive of the approach where the documents reference the need to review our operational costs, and I think it's important that us as elected members take that seriously. I can see that work's happened already on the service catalogue body of work, but there's restructuring underway in the business is my understanding, so I'm hoping that that service catalogue down the track will start to see some FTEs and numbers allocated to that body of work, because I do think it's really important that we look internally and make sure that we have our own savings and are maximising our efficiency within the business before we go and hit ratepayers for more. I'm comfortable with the rate increase that we have, which is at 5%. When it comes to the rates resolution, I'm going to be voting for it because I've already expressed my disagreement with a couple of the items in there around the doubling of rates for visitor accommodation, permit properties and vacant land. I did want to highlight that in a couple of the reports we say that the doubling of those rates is to ensure housing stock is retained and to stimulate residential development. I think we need to be conscious of saying that that's what they aim to do. Well, that's the basis on which they've been approved, but there's no real evidence that that's actually being, those outcomes are being created. For example, by doubling the rates on visitor accommodation properties, we don't actually have evidence that it is ensuring housing stock is retained. So I think we need to be conscious of making statements unless we've got the evidence to back them up. I noted that we have our penalty interest rate sitting at 10%, which I thought was quite high. I'm not going to flag any changes now, but a quick look around, I could see that Kingborough, Clarence, Glenorchy were at 5%, Taswater 6%. I think I actually managed to get the land tax penalty interest rate halved down from 8% to 4%. So I think that's something we should look at down the track. But in summary, I think this isn't my dream budget, but it's definitely heading in the right direction. I think we've got work to do when it comes to asset management, depreciation issues to work through, service review stuff to happen to make sure that we're, like I said, looking at our own backyard before we go to ratepayers. We need to make sure that we're heading towards saving rather than simply relying on borrowing, because if we don't bring in surpluses, we can't save for the work that we need. But I'm actually pleased to say that I'm confident that it's in good hands with the appointment of the new CEO and the finance team, really capable and give great sound advice. So I'll be this year very pleased to support the budget.
Any further discussion on the budget?
I have a question through you, Chair. Is the safety highly rated in the matrix for establishing the priority of our capital works program?
Safety?
The safety aspect of the capital works in question. So how high up does that prioritise that particular item? And I can provide some context around that question if you like, that in terms of ensuring that we maintain adequate arts and culture budgeting into the future, that I'm concerned that that matrix of safety that pushes things higher up, and rightly so, then makes the provision of budget for arts and culture a lesser priority, and ensuring that that then is maintained at an adequate level to ensure the future of our vibrant city.
Mr Reynolds, did you want to respond to that?
Thank you for the question. Safety is our number one priority when it comes to our workers here at the council, so it's always going to be a naturally high rating on the scale of assessment when it comes to capital in particular. But it was acknowledged through our workshops that public art and others that may be considered a lower or lesser priority may not get an equal standing, if you will, chance. So we've made a commitment to revisit that approach during the 25-26 budget process.
Thank you. My second point that I'd like to make in regards to this budget is the handling of petitions that come to council. Now, I understand that petitions that are before the council can be complex. However, I think we need to work out how we deal with these issues that the community are raising with us. If people have taken the time, our ratepayers, which we serve here in the chamber, to let us know of an item that is important to them, that we are fully understanding where our responsibilities lie and where our prioritisation of their request is. So, for example, when I talk tonight, I'm thinking specifically of the Marlin Road playground petition, which was submitted previously to the council, and I note that this hasn't been included in this financial year's budget. Now, it's not for me to say whether or not it should have been, but I will be watching closely that the community who put that petition to us has the opportunity to follow that up and seek for further clarification and perhaps future prioritisation of that project. And I do worry that if we get a petition to council, that it needs to be dealt with adequately to ensure that it could be added to the capital works budget, and that prioritisation is in our matrix of consideration when we're making those decisions.
Further discussion on the budget, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I just want to start off by just asking a question. Just on page 4, on the budget estimates, it says this small deficit is manageable and the city will be undertaking a number of reviews with the aim of returning to operating surplus in the short term. I was just wondering what the definition of short term is and how long are we anticipating to return to an operating surplus, just ballpark.
Mr Reynolds.
Thank you, through you, Lord Mayor. We're anticipating to move into a service in the next financial year, 25-26. That will be our aim.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a brief comments I'd like to make is it's good, I think, that we've had the annual plan as well as the budget go alongside each other. I think that's been really productive and it details, the annual plan details the overview of some of the changes and the strategic plans, and of course the financial management that's there as well. The financial management plan informs us of the context setting for the Tasmanian economic environment and the financial assumptions and the modelling and the strategies as well. I do want to note that I think it's important and it's highlighted there, so it's good to see, is that the fines penalty unit fee is set by the state government for both parking meters and traffic infringements. And so I think it's really important that that's been highlighted there, and I commend the staff on putting that forward. Overall, I'm really delighted with the work that has been done from the budget estimates, the annual plan, obviously the interim strategic asset management, the rates resolution, and the long-term financial plan as well. So I commend the staff on the work that's been done so far, and to highlight just, I agree with Councillor Elliott that there's aspects of depreciation expenses that we need to consider, and as we've all been part of the briefing before, I think some of those things to consider is the consistent payment to assets consumed over decades. It's important. What does long-term sustainability look like, as well as investment into the city's ICT systems, and also putting forward a plan for contemporary asset plans. So I think overall it's a good budget, and I'm happy. Thank you so much for the work.
Any further discussion, Alderman Bloomfield?
I just wanted to make the point that I was actually quite grateful to see this as what I suppose you could call quite a conservative budget. Prior years, my understanding was that there were a lot of capital works put on the table that were going to be almost impossible to fund, and that's all been pulled apart, put back together, and we have something that we can genuinely believe that we can attain, and do, which I think is the way we should be going. I also like the fact that the loan that we have is consistently coming down, and that will be more important than ever, because we can only assume at this point in time that interest rates may in fact continue to creep, which means that our serviceability needs to be held in check. So I'm actually quite grateful to see that we have effectively what I'd call a modest budget that allows us to take a deep breath and get ready for the next few years coming forwards. So I'm actually very grateful to see this. Other councils haven't been so lucky, as we're well aware, and in particular with recent reports coming back and explaining that our position is quite strong financially is a wonderful music to my ears. So thank you.
Further discussion? Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be brief. Thank you to the staff, and commend the new CEO for his work as well. It's the first budget which he's presided over, and of course the team in finance for their work putting together what is a really good budget that sees $180 million for us to continue to deliver excellent services to the community at a very high standard. They're services that everybody expects us to deliver. We've paid down our debt by 12.5%, which is again a great result, and we're very, very close to operating in the black, and I look forward to seeing that happen next year. And I would like to say as well, we've kept a cap on our rates hike with several councils, only a handful of councils underneath us for rate rises statewide, and the majority of councils falling at a higher rate rise than Hobart City has achieved in this budget. I do have one question which relates to line marking. It's quite specific, isn't it? To draw a line under that question, I note that there's $7,000 funding for line mark renewal, and I was wondering if that pertains to only line marking renewal when a road is resurfaced, or if that is line marking renewal specifically on top of existing roads, if that makes sense.
Ms Reynolds.
Thank you, through you, Lord Mayor. I'm not entirely sure if it relates to one or the other. I would suggest it may cover both situations.
Excellent, thank you, Director Reynolds. I would note that I do think that in the next year's budget that we do need to maybe up that figure just a little bit. We do have some fairly poor line marking around the city that I frequently hear from the community about. But otherwise, this is a fantastic budget. So thanks again to the staff. And I do note that our staffing costs are up by 4%, and that's indicative of us providing an excellent workplace for our staff with adequate remuneration. So a big shout out to the workers, and I'm really proud to be part of providing a good workplace for you to work in so that you can contribute to our city, and I wish you all the best with your EBA negotiations. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Sorry, just before you get up, Alderman Zook, I think Mr Reynolds had some further information about line marking.
Historically and traditionally, line marking is a state government responsibility. We're not keen to particularly take on that responsibility or that cost if we can avoid it.
Reynolds, can I just seek clarification on that? Is that even on local roads?
I understand that is the case, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko.
A question for the moment, Lord Mayor. Considering there's a lot of points being raised in regards to we're lower than other councils across the state, where does the Hobart City Council rate in respect of its rates base in the residential sector across the state? Does anyone have that information?
Through you, Lord Mayor, I don't have the information at the moment. As you understand, the councils are going through the process of setting the rates, but when you compare us to our neighbours, I believe we are lower than some of the other greater Hobart City Councils.
Good.
Okay, if there's no further discussion on the budget, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Dutta, Elliott, Coates, Purcell, Kitsos, Lohberger, Bloomfield, Kelly, Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against? So that's carried. Thank you, everyone. Next item is item 11, response to a petition, moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion on this? This is something that was a response to a petition, I think it's made it into the budget. Discussion on the item. Councillor Coates.
Well, just to confirm, because it was raised in the previous item, but if this is identified as a priority one, that then would come out of the budget for the priority one, is I'm understanding?
Mr Reynolds. Oh, sorry, Ms Abbey.
Through you, Lord Mayor, yes, that is the intention, yes.
If there's no further discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 12 is response to another petition on QR codes. Any discussion on this? I'll put that. All those in favour. Oh, I'm sorry. Too far. Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 13 is the North Hobart Neighbourhood Plan. Draft to go out for consultation. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Discussion on this going out. Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, look, I've just got a question for the moment in regards to the recommendation. It states the council endorsed the release. All we're doing is endorsing the release of the document. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I rise to my feet to once again commend the staff for producing a terrific report. And I would note that I had the pleasure to be invited along to a Yes in My Neighbourhood organisation event just a couple of weeks ago. And what the YIMBY movement is about facilitating more housing, facilitating more medium density and the missing middle in our cities, noting that the current settings disproportionately affect people who are not established, and that is young people and people who are disadvantaged. And what some components of the North Hobart Neighbour Plan does is rezone and upzone certain areas. And what I would ask of the community is for them to actually have a really good look at this and see what we can do to build a better future, particularly for young people, so that they don't have to buy houses in New Norfolk and Sorell and they can live near to work and indeed near to their relatives. If you want to see your grandchildren and you live in North Hobart, you probably don't want them living in Huonville. If they can live in a nice new apartment or townhouse just down the road from you, you're going to see them more often. And that's what a lot of this North Hobart structure plan or neighbourhood plan does, is sets the policy settings and the zoning for the next 20 years to ensure that we have a future-proof city. So please, please get on and engage with this if you live in North Hobart. If you're a young person, we never hear enough from young people, so please make a submission. It doesn't need to be long. But the staff have done a terrific job, and I think that this really sets North Hobart up for success moving forward. And I look forward to some of that missing middle being filled as a result of the work done here. But to the community, please get involved. It's what we want to see.
Any further discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 14 is the lease renewal for Amplitel
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion? With that, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 15 is the annual maintenance grants, leased facilities of the Tasmanian Hockey Centre, Domain Tennis Centre and the Hobart Netball and Sports Centre. Moved by Councillor Lohberger, seconded by Councillor Harvey. Discussion. Alderman Zuko.
No, sorry, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Dutta.
Lord Mayor, I just want to propose an amendment, and I've sent this through to everyone. Add a point number 9, and it reads that the grant agreement with Hockey Tasmania include a clause to recognise the joint planning work being done with council to redevelop the car park for housing, as point number 9.
Seconded by, I think it has to be someone different to Councillor Lohberger. Councillor Kitsos. Any discussion on the amendment or the substantive motion? Oh, sorry, any discussion on the amendment? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Any discussion on the substantive motion? Councillor Coates.
Look, this is for the benefit of those listening online. It may just be my computer stuffing up, but I think they've missed this item on the agenda, on the published one on the website. So I just wanted to sort of note that if anyone's watching along. But look, just very briefly, as Chair of Healthy Hobart, the sports communities do a really good job looking after those assets and supporting the sports and healthy activity, and so I just commend this motion.
Further discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 16. Just waiting for Alderman Zuko to leave. Okay. Item 16 moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Kitsos. Discussion on this. It's the proposed lease of the Cornelian Bay Sports Ground to Taswater, or part of it. Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just proposing a couple of amendments to this particular lease, just because of the sensitive nature of where it actually sits. It's right in between a heavily used sports ground, a very heavily used recreation area and a residential area. So I'm proposing 2 amendments. One of them is just to shorten the hours of operation slightly. I note that the documents behind the agenda suggest that the hours of operation be Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. till 6 p.m, and also 9 till 1 on a Saturday, or 10 till 1, I can't recall, but also on a Saturday morning. That's not the understanding that I had and other elected members had of the hours of operation of this site. So I'll just seek to actually re-clarify those, but to give Taswater the chance to actually work outside those hours if there is a critical issue only. So the amendment reads that the hours of operation are Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. till 5 p.m, with no use of the work site outside of those hours or on weekends, unless critical works are required. If critical works are required outside of these approved times, Taswater must first liaise with the nearby residents on the eastern end of Bell Street, and also with council staff. And I have spoken to a Taswater representative who has already made that commitment to me. And the amendment number 2 is that the entire work site, which will be shielded behind 2.4 metre hoardings, that the work site be shielded behind hoardings that feature creative art, similar to the hoardings used around Taswater's Tamar River Sewer Pipeline project in Launceston, which has the same sort of issues as this one, where it's very close to people. So those are the 2 amendments. I have sent them round and I've provided a rationale.
Seconded by Councillor Posselt. Alderman Blinken. Any discussion on the amendments? Councillor Harvey.
Rationale, please, from Councillor Lohberger. I'll look at the email, but could you just briefly?
Well, the first one I did explain it really. The rationale is the first amendment is to the hours of operation to bring them into line with a commitment made to elected members and staff at a recent workshop that we attended. And I have included that rider around critical works because I've spoken to my Taswater liaison who said they may need to do works outside of the hours, and if they do, they'll first speak to us and to the residents individually on Bell Street. And the second one is just that this site, we're facing the prospect of several months of large hoardings down there on Cornelian Bay. I just think there's a good chance to put some creative artworks up in between sort of the residents and the users of the site and the sports people and the depot where all the works will be occurring. It's just an opportunity. It's a blank canvas essentially, and I think we should take that opportunity to use it.
Further discussion on the amendments, Alderman Bloomfield.
Having also attended that workshop, it really was quite eye-opening why they need this area, how they plan to use it. And it was also very heartening to see that Taswater was very, very conscientious when it came to dealing with the residents in these areas, that they historically had bent over backwards and they were intending to do the same here. I believe that this amendment actually supplies confidence to the community to be consistent with what they say they're going to do, and it actually brings it into more sociable hours, I guess you could say, so that the community actually understands that Taswater is willing to work with them, and if there are exceptions, that they will hear about it, and I actually feel that's quite important. So I'm actually very excited to see this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Kitsos.
Yes, look, I'll support the amendment tonight made by Councillor Lohberger. I too attended the workshop with Taswater and would like to say thank you to them for that opportunity, because to go out on a bus and view the lines, the line that this pipeline is going to be laid in, really gave us a good understanding of just how big this piece of work is and how critical it is to Hobart's infrastructure. So very supportive of everything that they need to do to make this happen in the most organised and least disruptive fashion. Look, I believe from hearing their attitude towards community consultation that these amendments that are proposed won't be a problem for them to comply with, and that they do in fact want the best for the community and the best outcome for the future.
Okay, Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, as I understand, this project on that area will go for 4 months to get the pipes into the ground there, or up to a year potentially. So I'm just concerned that cutting it back by an hour every day and then not having a Saturday session might delay the completion of the project. So I understand the intent of the amendment, but I would like to think that this project gets completed, and taking away 5 hours a week from 7 till 6 or 7 to 5, and because that means, you know, knocking off and tidying up and shutting the gates and all that sort of stuff. But I don't support the first part, 7 to 6 and 9 to 5. I support the hoarding, but I don't support the other part. So, so could we have those separate?
Okay, Councillor Harvey, I'm just reminding you that the amendment does include the ability to extend those hours if it's critical.
Well, that means, yeah, but that involves another process of knocking on every single door. And I think that's extending the time period. I'd rather get the job complete.
Okay.
If I could sum up, Lord Mayor, I can answer the queries raised by or concerns, but I think...
Look, in listening to Councillor Lohberger's introduction to the item and in reading the rationale, and my recollection of the workshop, and no doubt what you guys were told on the tour, but I'm reasonably comfortable that this is something that Taswater isn't going to be a showstopper for them. I don't see if us passing this now doesn't then prevent, if Taswater, for whatever reason, you know, in terms of, I don't know, of hired gear and they need to get it done quickly or something like that. I mean, I don't see how they couldn't seek to, you know, come back to council or do a negotiation. I think this is, you know, at the end of the day, it's work in an area where there are residential areas, and we have a bit of a role there to set community expectation. Look, I just trusted our Taswater rep. Councillor Lohberger has done his work on this one, and look at, as he said in the rationale, you know, this is a commitment that was made to us, and I think it's fair enough. And if people give us a commitment, don't be surprised when we then turn around and include that in the amendment. So, look, normally I would understand where you're coming from. When you're taking 10% of a time out, it's going to take 10% longer. So overall, you're not actually necessarily improving a situation. But I think in this instance, there's a clear provenance of where this has come from. In my mind, at least, it's rational and makes sense. And for whatever reason, if it needs to be changed down the track, I'm sure there's avenues to do that. We've got a close relationship. We own, 10% of Taswater or something. So, yep. Thanks.
Okay, now for discussion on the amendments. I'm going to put the first one. Oh, sorry.
Just quickly, Lord Mayor, I understand the 5 p.m. cut-off. It's at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. is to do with daylight savings. So it won't be an issue for quite a few months. And if it is still an issue, as Councillor Coates points out, they're welcome to come back and talk to us. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the first amendment. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Dutta, Elliott, Coates, Purcell, Kitsos, Lohberger, Bloomfield, Kelly, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against?
Harvey.
That's carried.
All right, there you
And
go.
item number 2, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. And now the substantive motion as amended. Did you want to speak to the substantive motion, Councillor Kelly?
To the substantive
Yep.
motion, yes.
Off you go. Yep.
Lord Mayor, it's not so much about what the motion is, it's probably more of a procedure to me. This is the third time now that elected members have been put forward a proposal for this workspace in Bell Street, which I know extremely well. It's involved 2 meetings and the bus tour. And I just would have thought, and this collectively there's been a lot of time, a lot of people here tonight, a lot of people's hour taken up to talk about this depot. I really do think that if consultancy had taken place with the neighbours in this area, which I believe could be probably very temperamental sort of area, or it's an area that needs a really good dialogue with the neighbours, that's the main thing we're looking at here. Sure, we've got to consider Taswater, and I do believe, and I've said it before, that some less than 1 kilometre away there's a heap of land in Sells Point that can be used for all what's been proposed in this new works. So just somewhat disappointed that procedure to eliminate all this with the most basic and fundamental thing we've got to think about, which is our ratepayers, and asking them what they think. And if that was not going to happen, we wouldn't be here talking about it tonight. So more of a comment on the whole matter than any other thing there. So thank you.
Lord Mayor, I'd like to commend Taswater for their effort to accommodate the council and the concerns around the table. So I think they've done a sterling job organising the tour, presentation. The cast of thousands have turned up to the bus tour and the forum we had with them. I think they've bent over backwards to try and get this result because they understand it's important to communicate really well with us. So I'm quite satisfied with this site as a lay-down area for the upgrade of the sewerage works, and I'd like to think it'll get done in a speedy time, not be delayed. I guess the only other thing is the other sites that were looked at weren't suitable. The area around Sells Point Road, there's a lot of land there that has potential, but it's not our land. It's not Taswater's land. The area behind sewage works, there's a lot of vacant land there as well, which hopefully one day will turn into something, of importance. But for this today, I'm happy with the outcome. We did our due diligence. We questioned what they were doing. We required more information. They provided that information, and I think we've got a better outcome. We'll also end up with a sports field on the site as part of the rehabilitation of that site, so I think that's a good win as well. And hopefully the gardens that need a bit of work as well will also be upgraded, and I'd like to suggest that be done to the satisfaction of the CEO. I'm not going to move it as an amendment, but I think that's an important component of this. There's a garden that's been neglected for a long time there between Bell Street and the proposed laydown area, so I'm hoping that becomes a much nicer place, not full of weeds, not full of plants that don't belong, but hopefully a good area as well as another sports field. So I'm pleased about this.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Look, I just wanted to say that I want to commend TasWater on actually taking us on the tour, as well as the various different opportunities we had to ask questions, and the time to really just have a briefing, and time again been offered the opportunity to just ask several questions and our understanding around this particular project. One of the issues for me was why was the rising main not put in the Derwent River, and they discussed with us the issues with environmental impacts, including the spotted handfish and disturbance of contaminated sediments, Aboriginal heritage impacts, the risk of the pipeline being damaged, and the difficulties meant that option wasn't available. And so when we actually went on the bus tour, we followed the route of the rising main and where it will come through. Just to address something that Councillor Harvey said, it was also noted on the tour that they would actually leave the place in a much better position than they found it in. And as I note there in recommendation at point 4, it says that the site will be returned to the City of Hobart in a level state, topsoiled, seeded and irrigated, suitable as a sport playing surface. Any trees, shrubs removed are to be replanted, with TasWater responsible for maintaining the land during an 8-week maintenance. And so that's covered there in recommendation at the point number 4. The other thing that I want to address is what Councillor Kelly said with regards to the community care and consultation. As was outlined to us in the consultation, they will definitely be engaging with the community. And I'd also like to point out that recommendation at point 1 and point 2, it says, in principle, approval for a lease of the area shown on the plan to TasWater for a term of 1 year, and thereafter a monthly lease for a maximum of a further 2 years be provided, subject to consultation being undertaken with the residents of Bell Street and the feedback being provided to council. And at point number 2, it says, should there be reasonable objections to the proposal, that the council reconsider the matter. So I think they've been holistic in their approach. They have taken that community concern on board, and from their various accounts of what they do for the community, should there be any concerns, they will approach that with their due diligence and with care, in my understanding, and it's also been provided for in the recommendation. I want to thank once again the individuals of TasWater for giving us a really thorough overview and the best information that we could have to actually make an informed decision. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question at this point? It's related, just around the other project that I think we signed off on a couple of meetings ago about an area that Councillor Harvey moved some amendments around a more natural return of the site than the topsoil and seeded. Have we had any feedback from TasWater about their agreement or not to that proposal?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, there have been further discussions and we've reached an arrangement which meets the requirements of the resolution. There were actually some detailed plans in terms of what the rehabilitation was going to look like, so we were able to confidently say that the resolution would be met.
And just very briefly, that particular part of their work site, how long is that area going to be occupied for?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would have to check, but I think it's a longer time frame. I think it's 2 years
for
that one, with the potential for spilling over if they need extra time, from memory.
Great. All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Just wait for Alderman Zuko to come back in and then we'll move on to item 17. We'll move on to item 17, which is the Derwent River Ferry expansion. Moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Discussion? Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I wanted to firstly say how excited I am about the notion of more people moving around on the river. If you've ever caught the Bellerive ferry, you'll know just how great it is. It's a great way to start your day. It's a great way to finish your day. It's relatively good for the planet. There's beer and wine on board, coffee in the morning, or vice versa, whatever your thing is. It might be post-night shift. But what I wanted to pick up in this report is that there are 4 proposed locations for Sandy Bay, the Sandy Bay terminal, in this report, between Lords Beach and Red Chapel Beach is number 1. Number 2 is the Scout Hall and rowing sheds off Maryville Esplanade. Number 3 is Lower Sandy Bay near Long Beach. And number 4 is Rest Point Casino. And I understand from the commentary in the report and from chatting to the CEO that Rest Point have some fairly significant reluctance to be involved with having a public ferry terminal at their facility. And I rise and use this opportunity to try to convince the Rest Point board that this is going to be very good for your business and that it would be seen as contributing. We know that Federal Group is a large player financially in Tasmania and in Hobart, and this is an opportunity to get involved in a public-private partnership. And the reason why it's so important that they do that is because that is the best of these sites. The report identifies it's got all of the right conditions and an existing wharf that we could use and capture for public use. And it will activate the casino. The casino has a coffee shop. So who's not going to stop and grab a coffee on the ferry on the way to work? People coming to the casino for conferences, as I have done many times, for shows. I remember seeing Tim mention just at the very start of COVID, and I think half of the Royal Hobart Hospital staff were there, and I thought it was all going to end badly. But I have very fond memories of going to various events at the casino and participating in events indeed. And if you support a ferry at your casino, it means that people can come and spend their money and enjoy all of the things that you do at Rest Point and come in a way that doesn't involve a massive headache getting out of the car park after a big event, because that is undoubtedly the worst part of going to an event at the casino, is sitting in a traffic jam in the car park trying to get out. Instead, we could be on a boat heading back into the city, or to Bellerive, or to Lindisfarne, or indeed to Wilkinson's Point, which are all of the options in front of us today, enjoying ourselves and really encouraging more people to come. So please, Rest Point, consider the benefits that this might have to your business. Consider the community good that would come as a result of this, and do something for the people of Hobart. Sign up, work with our CEO, and let's get a really good outcome for everybody to have this ferry terminal right at your doorstep.
Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, I just have a question through you, if I can, to Councillor Posselt. Considering that you want Rest Point and you're asking, please, have you written to Rest Point and asked them officially?
Councillor Posselt, did you want to respond to that question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm not sure I would allow that question personally, but the point is not whether or not I have. The point is not whether or not I have written to count the casino or Federal Group. The point is that our CEO has been working with Federal Group to try and get a good outcome.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. An answer to the question, not what the CEO has been doing.
I think no, I won't accept that. I think Councillor Posselt is trying to answer your question. Okay. Just you can answer quite briefly, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Our CEO is working with Federal Group to try to get an outcome on this position, and in this public forum, it allows me to say to the Federal Group, this will be a good outcome, and for the community to hear that, which is much more effective than a letter from a single elected member.
Further discussion?
Lord Mayor, I think it's far more effective by any person if they really want to come into this.
Me, please.
I'm debating. I think it's far more effective for any person who wants to come into this chamber and start talking about whether a certain organisation should or should not be part of whether it's a ferry system, whether it's driving cars or anything, and in particular if it's the work that's being conducted by our CEO, it actually is detrimental to the work that the CEO is doing. I think if we are really interested in ensuring that we get businesses on board, or any person on board, is we partake in actually contacting that business or writing to that business ourselves. I don't believe that we should be coming in here and asking a certain organisation and questioning whether or not they're going to be part of it or not. And in particular, if the CEO is working on it, who knows what the CEO is doing behind the scenes? If the CEO is working on this project, I believe let's not even impede on the CEO's.
Point of order, Lord Mayor.
What's your point of order?
Causing offence, this line of debate is undermining what I have said, and it's conjecture that what I have said is undermining the CEO.
Yeah,
that reflects negatively on me, and I am offended.
I understand, Councillor Purcell. I won't accept that point of order because the offensive bar is a lot higher based on advice I've received from the Director of Local Government, and being personally offended by a fellow elected member's kind of political commentary is not a high enough bar, and I've been pretty consistent with that with all elected members. Councillor Zuko, would you like to finish your points? Or
Yes, look, I'll finish off by saying, Lord Mayor, considering I just got interrupted, is that the CEO continue the very hard work he's doing, and no doubt doing so in a very professional manner to discuss this ferry service or any other aspects with partners that could partner this project, and I have no doubt and every faith in the CEO.
Further discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Lord Mayor, I just want to make 3 observations. Point number 1, I am thrilled to note that the Australian government has given a grant of 20 million, and I think that is noteworthy for this project to go ahead. Point number 2, the CEO has been given the responsibility, and we are all aware of that. And we do realise and note that the CEO will do his job to bring this into fruition. Point number 3 that I want to make is this, that while the CEO is an employee of this council by the council members on this august chamber is free to make political comments or influence as per their particular thinking. So I don't see anything wrong with that. It is not the first time that I've heard people making comments along those lines. It has happened in the past, and therefore I accept the right of an elected member to put that particular point of view. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councillor Harvey.
I've got a particular or specific question with regard to Park and Ride at Wilkinson's Point. I think we've all at various times talked about park and rides in Hobart. We've got a park and ride in Kingston. Park and ride's an important element of getting people onto buses. The Kingston one, I'm not sure what the data is there of how many people park in the new car park. But Wilkinson Point seems a really, important spot to have park and ride. And I'm just wondering what the conversation's been like with Glenorchy to talk about that as a park and ride. I'm sure there's plenty of opportunity there.
Mr Doyle, would you like to speak to that?
Through you, Lord Mayor, there certainly has been conversations, Councillor Harvey, regarding opportunities for park and ride at Wilkinson's Point. Wilkinson's Point is certainly listed for some significant development, and the park and ride opportunities may be short-lived. The Department of State Growth are currently finalising their master plan for the river, which will identify the sites that are their preference, and that document will also address car parking and park and ride opportunities. I think, in short, yes, there could be opportunities for Wilkinson's Point, but it may be short-lived.
And I guess the other locations are walk and rides. Something in Sandy Bay. I'm hoping there's a catchment around there that want to walk down to that ferry, not drive their cars, and try and, find a parking spot or ride their bikes to the ferry if they're crossing the river. So, and I'm actually excited about this whole project. This will be a game changer for Hobart. I hope it gets to completion. That's the big question for me. Can we do it, or is it another really great idea and we just lost it somehow? But yeah, I look forward to this one day being part of the transport network in Hobart.
Alderman Bloomfield.
It's interesting. I can remember when I was in my early 20s, there was actually a ferry, and it used to go across the Derwent on a daily basis, and at the time my father-in-law used to regularly catch it, and he liked that because you could have a couple of drinks on the way on each time you'd go home. And it fell over time because it's actually quite expensive to run a ferry. You require not one but two drivers that are very expensive because they're highly qualified, and they didn't have the numbers, so it fell over time, and that's why we didn't have a ferry for a number of years. Now it's great that it's popular now, but it's currently popular, it's new, it's fun.
That was a very long time ago.
Must be really old then, I
That's
guess.
what
You
Councillor
know.
Harvey not-
But the whole point was it's been around, it's been done, it fell over, we're back up, it's working again. But I question, will it stack up once we stop the grants and the funding and the support? That's my first question. And it's something that we won't know the answer to for a number of years, but it's important to understand that that's where we are today. The second thing is that I remember in workshop there were a number of points made that haven't been made again today. And one of them I made was it's all great that we're going to get this money because we're responsible for this structure and setup, and we have to be responsible for a number of years. And I'd asked, and I noticed in 5.12 I've been supplied an operational budget, so I'm grateful for that, thank you. But I know that they talk about a kiosk rental, but I bet you we have to build that, do we? That's a question through you, Chair.
Mr Doyle.
Lord Mayor, yes, the construction of the kiosks will be included in the capital cost, which is part of the $20 million grant funding.
Good. Because I suspect that's where the coffees will be sold. That'll be where the snacks are sold. And the other thing that has already come out to play already with the current operations is that wherever we set up a ferry terminal, it does create parking issues. We've had profound issues over in Bell Reef, which took some time to fix, because wherever there was available parking, no matter who owned that area, they found all the spots were taken because people would happily park and then get on the ferry and leave their car there all day. So that's actually quite an issue, and I have no doubt that's probably why West Point might be quite concerned, because they don't have a facility that checks what purpose you're going to park in their great facility, which is designed entirely for them, entirely for their operations. And when they do have large functions on, as Councillor Posselt has rightly mentioned, it fills up its full capacity. And the third thing is that we're also assuming that the service supplied will be sufficient to allow the day trippers and so forth, because my understanding that this will be mostly early in the mornings and late at night to get people to travel to and fro work rather than your day trippers. So I think it's really important that when we take this responsibility on, that we understand that it's great today and it may be great for a couple of years going forwards. I am grateful that we will be moving this on over a couple of years back to the state government, so it's their issue later on. But I worry that being the panacea to fix everything and all and sundry to do with traffic, it may only be a temporary solution.
Sorry, I think Deputy Lord Mayor was on her feet first.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Yeah, look, I'm really excited about this, and I think it's going to be really wonderful in various different ways. Times change, things move on, things cycle back around, and that's the nature of life. I want to point out from the report that the Tasmanian Government had developed the draft River Derwent Ferry Service Master Plan, and it of course considered over 30 potential locations for the new passenger ferry infrastructure, but there's also shortlisted ones there in the report that we can see. I do want to highlight as well that Burberry Consulting was engaged by the councils to undertake this detailed assessment of each locality to identify the specific site, develop concept plans and P90 costings of the proposed infrastructure. And Burberry Consulting also was also engaged by the Tasmanian government to undertake the design development of the ferry terminal at Bellarine. So they've done some really great work, and I think it's really thorough if everybody's read the report provided by Burberry Consulting as well. I do want to note that local government, there will be no direct investment to be provided by local government for the operation of the service. It will be incumbent on the councils to invest in shore-based transport facilities like walkways and cycleways, and also that each council, as part of the collaboration between all of the councils, will and have committed to investing $500,000 over a 2-year period. I do want to also highlight that in the Tasmanian election campaign, the present Liberal government had committed an additional investment of $20 million to help develop infrastructure to support the expanded ferry service, and I really genuinely commend the Liberal government and really strongly encourage them to maintain this commitment to contributing that $20 million, which various different members across the political spectrum and have commended this particular investment on something that is going to be wonderful, not only for the City of Hobart, but for the Greater Council area. Thank you.
Great. Any further discussion? Oh, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I think it's a great thing that we're doing this study. I know there are conflicting views as to whether the numbers stack up. There's a few letters to the editor that have really sliced and diced it a bit, and it does look a bit dubious. But hey, I always say, as with the bikes, for instance, let's bike lanes and all that sort of thing, let's give us some really good, concise, hard evidence to look at. There's going to be some controversy with it, no doubt. Engaging with the stakeholders, particularly where the terminals are, is going to be very tricky. And look, I don't really think it's appropriate that should be standing here telling West Point or Federal Group how to run their business and about coffee shops and all that thing tonight. It's a broad discussion. There's many people to consult and look at, and I just encourage that we're provided with some good, clear, hard data to make some really good evidence-based decisions on. But in principle, let's proceed with this. Well, I know it is being proceeded with, and it's a great positive thing for the City of Hobart. So thank you.
Any further discussion? I might just make a few comments because it's something that I've been quite involved in. I think this is a really good example of local government leadership. This is a project that was an initiative of the Greater Hobart mayors in the lead up to the 2022 federal election. And to a certain extent, the City of Hobart itself has really led the ferry debate as well. I do need to also call out the work of some former directors and the former CEO who did a lot of work in this space as well. And in fact, it was a Zoom call with the Shadow Minister for Infrastructure, Catherine King, myself, and one of the former directors, where we pitched the funding for ferry terminals and said, you know, you can get interest from both Clark and Franklin, 2 federal electorates in one. They're very popular, and Catherine King's ears pricked up. We were actually pitching a whole range of projects. Her ears pricked up and she looked really excited about it. And it was former director Kat Panjari and Kelly Grigsby that very quickly moved on getting a proposal together, getting it to Catherine King, and within a couple of weeks it was their commitment to the Greater Hobart for the federal election. It was announced by Andrew Giles at the time. He was the Minister for Cities. And then we secured $20 million, which was a real win for the collaboration of the 4 councils working together. And when we do work together, we can get these kind of investments, but also a real win for advancing the ferry agenda. So there's been great, I've got to call out the state government's work on Bellarine. They've done a great job and they've responded positively to the interest in the Bellarine service, but it is very much the councils that have kept the pressure on to keep extending the services. And these terminals, there's no guarantee yet that we've got extended services. but they're a really important bargaining chip for us as councils to keep working with the state government to ensure that once the ferry terminals are in place, we get the services going to them. So it is still more work to do. We'll need to be working together as Greater Hobart Councils to continue, but it is important to note the work of Mr Doyle currently, and the City of Hobart is very much leading this. We do have a deadline of 2026 to roll out these 3 terminals. And, you know, I think they're going to be really exciting and they will help us. They are our contribution to the expansion of ferry services, but the very important player of the state government is crucial in that as well. I want to acknowledge, that both Mr Doyle and the CEO and others are working now closely with the state government. From my perspective, Sandy Bay is a really important. I'm really pleased that we've got the 2 options. I do like the Rest Point one better in some ways, but the other one has lots going for it as well. The important thing is, and people sometimes ask, you know, will Sandy Bay folks actually walk down to the ferry and catch the ferry? But the whole consideration of including Sandy Bay was much more about recognising that there is currently already a lot of traffic going through the city to drop children off at some of the big private schools, Hutchins, Farn, Mount Carmel, and that there could well be, there's already a number of students catching the ferry from Bellerive, from the Eastern Shore. So it's very much about that, but also recognising that the university, whatever future it has, we hope that as an educational institution or mixed use or other things, that it's going to have more people. We want more people to be using the site and getting to the site by public transport. And again, a ferry coming into Sandy Bay is an important part of that service. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to secure a Sandy Bay part to this project. And I think it's going to be a real asset for the city. Thank you. All those in favour of the report say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 18 is the City of Hobart Modern Slavery in Supply Chains Prevention Policy. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Harvey. Further discussion? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Look, I'm really delighted to read this. I was present at the Risk and Audit Panel on the 6th of June. They also considered this, and it's there written in the report that you have there, that the approach was a positive step to addressing the risk of modern slavery occurring in the city's supply chains. And they also acknowledged that this would be the first step and it would be something that we could further develop. They also noted that the City of Hobart would be the first Tasmanian council with such a policy, which I think is just wonderful. I do also like the fact that there's the ethics and conduct statement for suppliers, and it outlines the minimum set of expectations and behaviours for doing business with the City of Hobart. While the development of an ethical, social and sustainable procurement policy is part of the city's procurement strategy of 2023 to 27 and to be considered during 2024, addressing the risk of modern slavery in the city's supply chains now is an important step, as a large proportion of the city's spend is related to construction activities such as clothing, facilities, asset management, including security, cleaning services, and various different things that have been noted there. I do like the steps that are going to be considered to identify and manage the city's modern slavery supply chain. The risks being the risk assessment, supply engagement, staff awareness, reporting, tendering, contracting, and ethical procurement. I think it's holistic in nature. And it really is a wonderful first step into doing something very productive, ethical, social and sustainable when we're talking about within this context. So thank you very much once again to the staff. I commend you on the work that you've done here, and it's really great to be part, hopefully if it passes tonight, to be the first council in Tasmania to pass this. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I am also very pleased and want to thank the staff and highly commend them for bringing this to us. In fact, when I read the facts, I was quite astounded and shocked. It's interesting that it said in the report there's 49.6 million people who are victims. Around 41,000 potential victims in Australia, and more than 12 million are children, and 50% are females and girls. So, I was quite shocked and stunned with this information. And so I highly support this. It is on the right cause. And I think for me, by adopting this policy, we uphold the human rights and dignity. We protect our community from exploitation. We set a high standard for ethical procurement. And finally, I think for us, we show our commitment to a fair and a just society. So thank you so much for bringing this to us. I commend this.
Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you, Lord Mayor. I just want to speak on this briefly. For those that aren't aware, I immediately before this role was doing some contract work with LGAT in the procurement space, and so I just wanted to give members a little bit of confidence in supporting, fellow elected members, a little bit of confidence in supporting this motion. I guess from an operational point of view, although, as has been pointed out, we are the first one in Tasmania, this is something that is happening elsewhere as well. And through LGAT and through our involvement, we are on national procurement panels where organisations, to get appointed to those panels, have to provide evidence and statements against modern slavery. I think traditionally in Tasmania, being such a small place, a small island, relatively small councils, it's a lot more local suppliers, and there just hasn't necessarily been the issues. But for a lot of the procurement that we undertake, we partner with local Bible Queensland councils through LGAT. We go with national procurement ones, things like Fleet. And it is not an overly onerous process, because when they get appointed to the panels, that's what they've got to provide evidence against modern slavery, similar to how they provide evidence for their insurances, public liability, all those sort of things. So I guess from an operational point of view, we will obviously have a bit of work to do in terms of when we go direct to market or when we do our own sort of tenders and things, but in a large part from an organisational point of view, this gives emphasis to like Government Association when they do their procurement work, to go down this path and make sure that as a sector, when the local government is spending money in procuring, we can help ensure that community standards are also met and do our part to sort of combat this plague of modern slavery. So, look, I guess just a little bit of insight into what sometimes happens in the background, and I'm sure Lara was there if we had any questions to ask, but I have every confidence that the staff will be able to enact this policy effectively and do so in a way that also enables other councils to benefit. So, yeah. Support motion.
Well, Mayor, there's another area in here that wasn't touched on, and I know it's not exhaustive, but it's all the other, it's electronic things. You know, I've watched some harrowing videos of young children being lowered into holes in the ground to mine certain minerals that go into our electronic devices and also go into the production of electric cars. So there's a whole range of things we need to be conscious of. And I'm assuming that whoever we buy our electronic equipment from have a statement that can assure us that no slave labour has been used in the production of the minerals that go into these devices. So is that something else? And just for advice, I think that's another important element, because it's not just the clothing where we've got people in factories, and just a number of years ago there was over 1,000 people that died in a factory collapse in Bangladesh, for example, who were in really terrible circumstances. But also electronic devices, I'm concerned about those minerals, and we've all seen the videos of young kids who are scrambling to compete for, ore to mine minerals from, and other people as well in that industry. So I hope that that's included in this. Do we need to?
I think Ms McDonnell is keen to provide some further information.
Through you, Lord Mayor, thank you. Initially we'll be looking at our own supply chains, but we will be asking our suppliers to look at their supply chains as well. And I do note that the UN provides some statistics. They talk about the electronic industry parts for mobile phones, etc. So that will
Okay. Yeah, well, if
Councillor
that's
Harvey.
on the list, then fine. I'd love to think that we're leading the, you know, we're role models for this in total. And I appreciate Councillor Coates's indication that the Local Government Association is also looking at this, because it is a big issue and those numbers are terrible that Councillor Dutta referred to from the report. So I'm pleased that we're operating in this space, and it'll get better as we go, and we need to put the heat and the pressure on all of our suppliers, and they need to talk to their supply chains as well. So it's really complicated how this will work, but we need to be sure that we're not exploiting people around the world through our supply chains.
Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, look, I fully support the comments made by Councillor Harvey. I think I actually, when I read this, that is exactly what popped into my head in respect of all the electronics and especially EVs. I've also read and looked at some of the harrowing aspects that you see and read about. Look, I understand that you know, we can't cover every aspect, but I still believe that we should adopt a policy in respect of our electronic equipment, any EVs we buy, or anything that's associated. So I'm sorry to say, and I'm sorry to push it, but I'm going to move an amendment that a further report come back from the CEO. I'm not going to push it tonight. Further report come back from the CEO in respect of expanding this policy in accordance to the statements made by Councillor Harvey. So, and the concerns raised by me in respect of.
I'll second that.
Okay. You can't, I don't think. You spoke. Oh, you can. Okay. So.
You didn't, did you second the substantive?
I think I second the substantive.
Yeah.
Councillor Elliott. Is there any discussion on the amendments? Oh, the amendment.
On the amendment.
Oh, the amendment is that the CEO further explore some potential amendments to the policy that reflects any electronic or electronic EV and battery related, you know. No, I'm just trying. Slavery aspect. Yeah, modern slavery.
Point 4.
Councillor Coates, comment on the amendment.
On the amendment, yeah. Look, the amendment sort of makes sense to me. I think it's semi-covered in point 2, where we're already authorising the CEO to make a minor amendment. I think maybe we just can remove minor and maybe add in specifically around electronics. But I mean, the thrust of the amendment sort of makes sense to me. Having worked in the sector, I know that that is exactly the sort of stuff they'll be looking at anyway. But I mean, you're right. In some ways, you set the policy, and to make a change, got to come back to us. At the moment, it only authorises minor. You know, maybe we should. I'm perfectly comfortable myself giving that power to a CEO and staff. So, look, I would support the motion and just note potentially point 2 sort of covers it anyway. But if we want to expand, that's fine.
I'll come back.
Further discussion.
I'm not sure if I can move an amendment just after what Councillor Coates said. Maybe it would be feasible to delete minor. I can't move it, can I? Or it's just fine.
Lord Mayor, point of clarification. I understand what he said there, but to me, I'd like it to come back with detail. That's why I'm asking a report to come back. That's what I'm seeking.
Further discussion on the amendment. Seek clarity, some advice from the staff, probably through the CEO, but probably to Ms McDonnell. I thought you just said that the policy did cover and will cover electronics and battery-related purchases, or not?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So on the top of page 4 of the particular report, it talks about the risk factors and products, particularly aimed at electronic before you is quite general in respect to the statements it's making about council's should be approved, council's position in respect to this. But it is intended to cover electronics, and it is intended to cover all of those things that that have been discussed in the chamber this evening.
So I guess, Alderman Zook, I'm just not sure that we need the extra report. So long as we're getting some regular updates about the implementation of the policy, I think we're going to get the information about what we're doing to reduce the risk that our procurements in the sort of battery, appliances, EVs, other electronics will be captured by this policy. That's my.
I'm not convinced in what I've heard so far that it does. So I leave the amendment so I can get a further report.
Well, was there a specific reference to phones and batteries and things in this page? Because I don't know what page 4 is. I don't have any page 4s on anywhere really.
Ms. McDonnell, did you want to?
Just to clarify, and to page 88 of the agenda.
That's the agenda, not the documents.
That's correct, where it talks about
Page 88.
the key risk, gives an indication of types of risk factors that this report is to address.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Okay, yeah, I missed that.
Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Zuko, Dutta, Elliott, Coates, Kitsos, Lohberger, Bloomfield, Harvey. That's it.
And against?
Purcell, Kelly, and
Okay, that's carried. So we'll now move on to the substantive motion. Were there any further discussions on the substantive motion? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 19 is the annual plan progress report for the period ending 31st of March 2024. Any that's a receive and note. Moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Just a small thing, and I did bring this up in the workshop, just wanted to note on the timeliness of this coming to us. So I was hoping, for example, when we have the end of June report, and I know it's a swift turnaround, but if we would be able to have that report at the end of July, is that feasible?
CEO?
Yes, the moves are already underfoot to do exactly that.
Excellent. Yeah, that's good, just because there's a long time. Thank you.
No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 20 is the sale of land to South Hobart. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Councillor Lohberger. Discussion? Councillor Lohberger.
Wanted to get up and welcome this. I think anything we can do to help the issue with social housing in the state, or in the city, is vital, and I think this is easily within our remit to do. So I'm quite supportive of it, and I suspect the whole room is, to be honest, so I'll just sit down.
Further discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 21. Receive and note a code of conduct determination. Someone want to move that? Moved by Alderman Zuko, seconded by Alderman Bloomfield. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 22 is a motion. Invite Councillor Kitsos to move the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I feel very strongly about this motion that I'm...
Sorry, we need a seconder. So, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Sure. Look, I wanted to introduce this motion that seeks to reform and enhance our approach to resolving disputes within our council, disputes that not only affect ourselves here in our workplace, but also the communities with which we serve. So to read the motion to you, It states that the Lord Mayor write to the Director of Local Government and the Minister for Local Government to request the prioritisation of the amendments to the Local Government Act requiring the parties to a Code of Conduct complaint to attempt conciliation as a mandatory part of the requirement of the Local Government Act prior to the referral of a complaint to the Code of Conduct panel. Should a conciliation be unsuccessful at resolving the dispute, that this then be communicated to the Code of Conduct panel to inform their deliberations. I further request that while these statewide changes are being finalised, that the Council requests that elected members follow the process set out in the elected member issues resolution policy, which is that prior to commencing a formal Code of Conduct complaint, elected members who are parties to any disagreement should endeavour to resolve their differences through discussion or formal mediation. So allow me to elaborate on the rationale behind this motion, which is grounded both in my professional experience and in a commitment to fairness and effective governance. As you may know, my background as a healthcare professional has taught me the importance of mental health. By prioritising conciliation, we aim to empower parties in conflict to find common ground before resorting to formal processes. This approach not only aligns with the principles of restorative justice, but also fosters a culture where disagreements are seen as opportunities for growth rather than opportunities for further division. Restorative justice encourages learning from the conflict experience. It prompts participants to reflect on what led to the conflict, how it can be prevented in the future, and what steps individuals and the organisation can take to foster a culture of respect, collaboration, and conflict resolution. Effective communication and conciliation are often the keys to restoring relationships and ensuring that the focus remains on the well-being of those that we serve and preserving our own mental health in the workplace. We need to demonstrate this high standard. The current adversarial nature of Code of Conduct complaints not only incurs significant financial burdens on the ratepayer, but also neglects opportunities for this restorative justice and relationship repair. What I've proposed tonight aims to integrate conciliation into our framework and recognise its potential to resolve disputes more amicably and cost effectively. By prioritising this conciliation, we can demonstrate our collective belief in the power of a constructive dialogue and a belief that transcends party lines and serves the greater good. So I thank you for the consideration tonight.
Any discussion? Councillor Lohberger?
Look, yes, I just wanted to rise to support this motion. I think it's important. I have spoken before quite recently about the need for us all to work together. I think it's really important. I'm not the type of person to bring these types of complaints, and so I have not actually bought one, but I have been on the other end of one. It is a difficult process and it's expensive and time consuming, and I do understand that there's a significant amount of money being spent by the council on these processes. I think this represents a potential pathway to avoid some of those costs, and I'm very supportive of it. I do have a question through you. Do we know what the total is for the amount of for the Code of Conduct issues that this particular council has had since we started, since we began in 22?
We've got it. We did have a question on notice about that.
A rough answer is fine.
Yes, through you. If memory serves, we have had some noms on this in the past, one for the life of this council as part of a broader question on legal costs, and one then I think from the deputy on the previous council that I think we've given the answers. I don't recall the headline number, but I'm happy to dig it out and provide it again.
That'd be fabulous, thank you.
I was going to say I can assist in the answer.
All right. Well, I might just wrap up and say, look, I commend this motion. I think it's really worthy. I'll certainly be voting for it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Just to answer Councillor Lohberger's question, from my understanding and my memory, for the previous council from 2018, I think it was, until for the same amount of time, it was a year and 3 months, I think it was that previous council from 2018 until 2020, around March, legal costs totalled around $20,000. For this period, from 2022 November until 2024 March, I think it was close to $250,000. That's a very big difference. So when we're talking about it being this particular motion being cost effective. I think it most certainly will be cost effective. Those are just the figures from my memory, so please go and verify that yourself. I've asked this question on multiple occasions and the information is there. I think it's beautiful in sentiment. I think not only is it beautiful in sentiment, but it's practical. It has the potential of creating a completely different dynamic and cultural environment where we don't have to always be in that adversarial engagement process. Instead, maybe we can be inquisitorial and we can grow from it and learn from it. And I think that the sentiment behind this motion is a wonderful thing, and I think it's high time that we have a motion like this, and that we all collectively as elected members, if we're so particular about the fact that we're wasting ratepayers' money, yet when we look at what was told to us about close to $250,000 on legal costs, in comparison to $20,000 for the last term, surely we have to look at ourselves at some point and go, yeah, maybe we should do something different. So thank you very much for bringing this motion, and I'm in full support of it.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm just wanting a clarification through you. The 250,000 mentioned is enormous. Now, is it legal cost or is it just a code of conduct panel cost?
I actually have the document here with me that I can just refer to. It was a response to a question raised by Councillor Sherlock, meeting date 19th of February 2024. And it does break it down into a range of legal costs that are linked to elected members, but not all code of conduct related. So the cost for the code of conduct process, so that's the costs of the panel and their time and their process, was $39,923.42. So they bill the council for code of conducts, there's a range of costs for code of conducts. They can be as low as $2,370. They can be $7,000, $4,000 or $25,000. So they depends, but this is the cost of the panel's time that they then bill the council. The other matters, which you can go back and read the question on notice, is related to other advice and matters from different lawyers, and I don't know the details of those, but it's all in that report. Further discussion, Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, just very quickly, I guess it's sort of gone in this direction a little bit, but it is important to note that we can make decisions that really do upset members of the community. The code of conduct process exists for a reason, but we can have them lodged against us as a way of payback, if you like. And so I think the principle that we can be defended, and sometimes those costs have to be incurred, and it's not necessarily the person's fault that they're incurred. That said, I think where possible, not having to go down a code of conduct process is probably the best outcome. But I think it's worth recognising that sometimes that's just where it ends up. That said, I think this motion speaks to an important step. I mean, it looks like it's sort of in train anyway, but if we can do our bit, sometimes that can help the wheels turn faster. I guess, notwithstanding this, there's going to be many times where people, for whatever reason, cannot reconcile, and sometimes people also want the opportunity to have that hearing. That can bring some closure as well. So, I guess that said, look, I support the motion and I support the intent behind the motion, but I just want to note it. But just because a whole lot of money is spent on defence and legal fees, sometimes that can be for appropriate reasons as well. So, thank you.
Democratic rights, natural justice, there's no fee that anyone can ever put on that. I know myself, I've gone through a number of issues over my time, and I've also going through an issue right at the moment. This council would be surprised at how much I've set aside for a legal battle I've got on at this point in time. So as far as I'm concerned, when someone has to defend their rights, money is not the object here, irrespective of who's paying for it. But I want to make this point. I'll just let Councillor Kistos know I'm going to support this, but I'm going to ask for a minor amendment which I believe will help you, but I'll get to that in a moment. You may accept it. Over the past nearly 2 years, Lord Mayor, I would say I had opportunities to put codes of conduct in on a number of occasions. I didn't do so, Lord Mayor, because I didn't want to go through the whole process of it, because it's time consuming, it's stressful, and it doesn't really resolve a lot of things that I wanted to resolve. Because once certain things have happened, if they happen in this chamber or happen, can you ever sort of take it back? Maybe you can, and you can achieve something for yourself. But I decided not to follow through, and it had nothing to do with money. Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be based on a monetary thing, it should be based on how you feel, or how you feel as an individual, and how hurt or not hurt you are, or how it affects your family and other people around you. One of the main reasons why I'm taking on a battle that I'm going to do outside of the council is not for myself, it was actually for my partner, because she actually feels far more hurt with what is happening and happened in the situation. So we've got to take other parts of why a person may or may not put a code of conduct up. It's not sometimes obvious to all of us. There could be other factors. Because I decided, me personally, not to proceed with codes of conduct on matters that I felt and really hurt by in this council, during this council in the last few years, and I do support Councillor Kistos. I'm sorry, I'm Italian, so that's a Greek name. Greeks and Italians sometimes. Anyway, it's good to have a laugh. I would like to make this a little bit more powerful, if possible. Where the words are the parties to a code of conduct complaint to attempt conciliation, give consideration to the words of code of conduct complaint to have mandatory conciliation as part of it. Not to attempt the conciliation, that at the first step it's mandatory to go to conciliation. And I believe that there means that prior to any person across the political spectrum puts in a code of conduct, the first step to it is mandatory conciliation. In other words, there's some form that I fill in, send it to the CEO, which says I'm going to put a code of conduct against any Collingwood supporter, and oh, wait a minute, who beat us? Carlton, sorry, Carlton supporter, and the CEO activates the mandatory conciliation. So that way there, all of us go to that in the first place, and rather than trying to tempt it, it's mandatory. So if we're writing to the minister,
30 seconds.
If we're writing to the minister, we ask the minister to do so. And it's up. I'm not going to move an amendment. It's your motion. Give thought to it, and the seconder, if you want to make that minor change there to put the word mandatory conciliation. Only something for someone to consider.
I think the CEO who's looked into all of this, has talked to the Director of Local Government, might want to provide some information on that.
In terms of the ability to be able to require it right now, it's challenging until the legislation's changed, but reading the motion, and I can see the wording is a little bit sort of ambiguous there. What it says is attempt to conciliate as mandatory as part of the requirement. So I think you're actually talking about the same thing. I just think it's because we can't mandate the outcome, but you can attempt and that it be mandatory, which is what I think you're saying. Yeah.
All I'm saying that conciliation is mandatory.
Yes, which
right?
is the proposal.
Pretty much what it says.
Well, I'm reading it different. But anyway, if that's what it says, that's what it says. It's fine.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I'm going to disagree with Alderman Zuko. Yes. So I think this is a good idea when it comes to, there's two categories of things I think that fall in to code of conduct space. There's the hurt feelings complaints. There's, oh, I'm offended, or you disrespected me, or you didn't like what I put on social media, and that view, you're not allowed to hold that view's rude, that's discriminatory. And then there's the real stuff, the breaking of real laws that actually mean something. You know, laws around privacy, conflicts of interest, improper use of information, improper use of office, physical assaults. So they're things, those proper breaches of real rules, that you can't really mediate out of those. You can't mediate out of a conflict of interest issue. You can't mediate out of misusing office or information. You certainly can't mediate out of assault situations. So I think it is completely impractical and unfair to require mandatory conciliation on those real issues, real laws. The hurty feeling stuff, yep, let's go to conciliation and try mediation, because there's always two sides, and but not the real stuff. I note that the financial implications here are listed as none, and writing a letter is only obviously indirect costs, but if this was to come about, especially mandatory, this will add to the cost tally, because a lot of things probably actually, especially if all of that, the breaking of real proper rules and laws is mandatory, then it won't be resolved at that level. So there is a risk that this could actually add more to our costs. I think what we obviously need to do is to or just be aware of our conduct, especially when it comes to breaking real laws, so that we don't have the situations arising where people are putting in code of conduct complaints related to that serious stuff. I've got a whole heap of issues with the code of conduct process, full stop, but that's for another meeting, and I'm hopeful that the changes that the Director of Local Government, Office of Local Government are looked at will address some of those. But I would be able to support part 2 around engaging the elected members engaging in issue resolution beforehand, but that's already in place anyway. That policy already exists and is active, but it's not really being implemented. But I won't support part 1 when it comes to requiring, because I'll go back to again, you can't mediate out of breaking real laws. Thanks.
Further discussion, Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll come to a couple of questions, but just very briefly, I think it's important to note the kind of contempt with which the Code of Conduct framework has been treated by the previous speaker, who chose to use the terms real laws and breaking real rules, implying the Code of Conduct framework is in fact not real and disagrees entirely with the premise of the situation. I think that it's quite dangerous to say that the Code of Conduct framework, which is, I believe, legislated, is not a real law or a real rule. We have all signed up to follow the Code of Conduct when we took our oath of office, and it's something that we should consider seriously when we sign up for this role, that we will abide by the Code of Conduct. So I take some exception to that language. The questions I have are, through you, Chair, can any officer provide the number of Code of Conduct complaints in this term, and whether or not they can be split into resolved and unresolved matters? So if we can be provided with how many live Code of Conduct matters are before the panel, because nobody knows. We don't know what, and it's relevant to what we're discussing now. Are we talking that we've got one Code of Conduct issue in front of us, or are we talking that we've got 10 or 20 and this is really starting to stack up as in terms of cost to ratepayers? Because we won't know the cost of the live issues until down the track. So I think it is really relevant to know that.
I think the CEO's informed me that he'll take that on notice. Alderman Bloomfield.
There's a few elements here, and I kind of sit in the middle of everyone, I think, at the moment. because the way I see this chamber is I see it as a team. And we are terribly dysfunctional, we all have our own opinions, we all are incredibly strong personalities, and we all want to lead, and we all fight each other regularly. And that's how it is. It's perfectly imperfect. But that's how it works. And the problem that we have with things like codes of conduct is that whatever tenacious bond we have today with each other, which we actually need to do our work because we need to at times support each other, can be broken with a code of conduct, because it's pretty much the hardest slap we can give each other, and what I see is breaks bonds. It's like we're going to go legal on each other. And I also feel too that it will actually add costs quite easily. In fact, I think it's not necessarily fair to say that legals are $250,000 and it's all code of conduct. I don't think that's the case at all. I actually think a lot of that came from a discrimination case and a few other pieces that were nothing to do with code of conducts. And I also feel too, when we're talking about different types of breakages of rules, whether or not they are a conflict or something that's profoundly legal and has real implications versus, you know, imperfect wording that hurt feelings and so forth. What will happen in mediation is quite profound, because what it will do, it'll either crystallise the issue, so the person who has done effectively the wrong thing can understand that they've done it wrong. They can possibly explain their case to the other who's put them up for accountability. And whilst that might not fix it, it will crystallise it. Sometimes that is actually an important part of the process. But equally to mediation and saying, look, what you did wasn't right, is quite important. And I do see that that would work quite well. Personally, I have refrained enormously from doing codes of conduct. And in fact, yes, I did do some before I was elected, because I never understood the ramifications, the humiliation and the difficulty it caused. I had no idea. It was something that you heard and you saw, and the public will follow us. If we regularly do it, so will they, because they'll think it's fine. It's like when I get personally attacked on social media by other elected members. You know what happens? All the other public go, you know what, let's take a pot shot at Alderman Bloomfield. It's what we have to do today because another elected member had a go. It's not good, is it? So if we're having goes at each other, we're only telling the public that that's fair game and we should do it to each other. We don't deserve the respect because we're not respecting each other. And that's actually pretty important, isn't it? So when I come back to the point of team, of this room has to work with each other, we actually do. And yeah, there are plenty of times where I have been quite upset, hurt, frustrated, horrified at behaviours that I've had to tolerate and walk past. I've had accusations which I have thoroughly disagreed with and have been really hurtful, but I did not walk that next road. I chose not to because I wanted to somehow work out how to walk back and work with each of you, because that's actually our job. It is actually our job to work with each other. And if we keep throwing codes of conduct at each other, we're not really doing a very good job of it. So to actually create this extra element of mediation should work. But I will also point this out too. Mediation was offered to me some months ago when there was a lot of bad stuff happening, a lot of noise and a lot of terrible things were said on social media and all the rest of it. And I still chose not to go then either, because I actually genuinely felt that mediation wasn't going to solve my problem. So I don't believe, honestly, that mediation will genuinely do a lot. Perhaps it might solve some cases, but I do believe genuinely it will absolutely add costs. But realistically, we should look at each other. We've had a great meeting until the personal tax started again tonight. And I honestly think we need to rise and start looking at each time we speak, let's be better.
Further discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. note the motivation and the rationale behind this particular motion, and which is the cost burden, and hence we are discussing this particular motion. I have a question to ask before I make further comments, and the question is, through to the appropriate director or the CEO, the Local Government Act has these amendments, and they passed both the houses with this specific change. Is that correct or not?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Look, correct, that's my understanding. They've been through both houses of the Tasmanian Parliament and are just waiting to be gazetted. And the delay in gazetting is there's a policy framework that has to sit under this that the Office of Local Government is presently finalising ahead of plan consultation.
So just a further clarification. So the question that I'm wanting to really understand and find an answer for is that this conciliation process is in that Act.
Correct, in general terms. My understanding is the amendments will have a mandatory conciliation component, if you will, in the amendments to the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Now, if that is the case, Lord Mayor, then under the Acts, it is my understanding that policies that we make is subservient. It's the Acts that really is the powerful. So because it is going to be in the Acts, we have no choice but to follow that. And the motion is simply asking that we hasten this, as it were, and I support that. If that is already in the Act, it is a matter of process that will finish. For us to then bring this on as a matter of process is only right and logical thing to do. And so therefore I'm going to support this. And I commend the motion, and in the tone and the spirit in which it has been put to us. I understand that all 12 of us are different in our shape, size, looks, etc., in our ideas and ideologies. But the point I want to make here is this: we will continue to debate each other and disagree with each other. That is the nature of this game. It is the nature of this politics we are in. But the point for me is, it's not to attack the person, but to attack the points. And we should be mature enough to accept that my particular amendment today, with regard to the $30,000, I shouldn't take it personally. It was an idea that I put across. It was defeated. For me, that's the end of the story. But to then go and attack people personally, and I stand corrected, in my 6 years that I've been here, haven't taken that path. But I will continue to attack the points that people will bring and find a clear demarcation that I don't attack the person. So I support this, and I think it is a very valid way for us to go down this path, and thank you for bringing this.
May I ask a question through you
yes,
to Councillor Kistos? Would you be prepared to split the motion and put it in, well, in other words, point 1 first and point 2? No? Okay, sorry.
Hey,
Lord Mayor, just a
Councillor
brief comment.
Harvey.
I found this quite informative. Some good points being made around the table, and it was probably a longer session than the budget session. So, but I think we just need to understand, and there's some good points made about not getting to the point of codes of conduct. So we do need to moderate how we behave around the table. And a distinction with Councillor Elliott, some of the things she said with regard to breaking laws, they're laws, so they would be handled in a different way to codes of conduct. And the codes of conduct are listed in the code of conduct. So it's those points we're referring to here. And if there's any assault or, conflicts of interest, then the conflicts of interest is code of conduct, I think. But malfeasance and, criminal activity, that goes to a different place. Anti-discrimination could also go to a different place as well, through the Anti-Discrimination Commissioner, or, as we've seen of late. But I do commend the mover of the motion. I'm happy to support this tonight, but I'd like to think that we all just have a look at ourselves, and I haven't taken out a code of conduct, been tempted many times, but I haven't been bothered to do it because it's like, oh my God, it's more expense to the council. Is it me being upset by something, or is there a real issue there? And I haven't really had many issues. I've got a thick skin, so do your best. But when it comes to having codes of conduct against me, I've had a couple, and they've gone nowhere other than wasting a lot of time and resources. They've both been dismissed with nothing found. So, yeah, so my view of a code of conduct was to both of them were complete wastes of time. Everyone concerned it was a waste of time, a waste of the time of the panel. But that said, the people who brought those codes of conduct had a grievance against me, and it was tested and failed. So they've got a right to bring that.
Point of order. I do apologise.
What's your point of order?
That's not accurate.
Sorry, Alderman Bloomfield, but an accuracy isn't a point of order. A different view about...
No, it's factual.
Sorry, it's not a point of order. Under the
Anyway, I'll moderate my language. So people had the right to take a code of conduct, and the outcomes were in my favour. So I'm fine with that. And that might be someone's relief to get it off their chest to do it, but the mediation element should be offered first, and I would like to think that people go through mediation before they jump straight to the code of conduct. So I'm supportive of this occurring because we could have saved a lot of time in both instances with me if we had had a mediation session so people could vent their anger or whatever it was. So I'm supportive of the motion tonight.
All right, if there's any further discussion, did you want to sum up at all, Councillor Kitsos?
Oh, thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I'm very heartened to hear that there's a lot of support for this motion around the table, and coming into this space as effectively a new member, a new employee, a new work environment, I think that this makes me feel reassured that I'm going to be working in a safe, respectful environment that values relationships, that values mental health, mental well-being, and that we're considering how our actions are impacting the people that we serve. So I feel quite heartened tonight by the support for this motion.
Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour?
Zuko, Dutta, Coates, Passelt, Kitsos, Lohberger, Bloomfield, Kelly, Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
Against?
Elliott.
That's carried. We'll now move on to item 23, which is another motion from Alderman Bloomfield. Would you like to introduce your motion, Alderman Bloomfield?
Thank you. This motion was presented with my understanding at the time that the risk and audit findings on the Scrambles peer report were going to be tabled tonight, which is not the case. So that outcome remains confidential and will be removed from our discussions. So I just wanted to openly remind everyone of that because that's quite important.
Sorry, Alderman Bloomfield, I'll just seek a seconder for your motion.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Lohberger.
My mission, however, remains the same. That is, I wish to ensure good governance through professional and thorough reporting on data on any major project being considered in Council. This chamber does not just sit and nod heads to any data supplied. Our role is to challenge and interpret reports supplied and then coming to a group consensus post robust debate. It's imperative that reports submitted are considered fit for purpose and include basic elements such as being actively legible. For instance, I really need to know that we are going to start supplying reports with font sizes no less than 10 points in size. I can't read less than 10, no one can. And that the consistency of and display of charting data compiled so not to create accidental bias. There is a genuine need for council processes, including that of data collection, to contribute to developing and improving trust in Hobart City Council's operations with the community. And I note more than anyone that I do not want to ever have to push forward another peer review on staff public reports. So I've tabled requests in this motion that will enable a more constructive and mutually respectful system for staff and elected members to work together. As an example for you, prior reports supplied do not always consistently adhere to Transport Commission guidelines when it comes to traffic. For instance, and I have an example here, in February 2023, we had a report submitted here, and I quote, recommending relocating 8 cars from the laneway to Centrepoint car park. Remember this one? That Centrepoint car park currently averages less than 100% occupancy, so this proposal does not represent a real loss of income to the council nor a loss of parking amenity for shoppers. And that the current occupancy of the city-managed car park facility averages 86% and rarely achieves 100%, with the exception of specific high-value shopping days. Now, if we actually apply the Guide to Traffic Management Part 11 Parking on page 29, I quote, it should be noted that a parking system operates at optimum efficiency when the system is being used slightly less than at full capacity. And that's accepted as being in the range of 85% to 95% of capacity. And that supply, the number of car parks we offer, should therefore be around 10% higher than the estimated demand for parking. Therefore, 85% is thus considered to be full capacity of a car park. And yet we were supplied this data with this report suggesting, well, we're not 100%, doesn't matter. It does matter. We're not actually being compliant to traffic management. And I need to start bringing this back to the table. No consideration of Transport Commission guidelines is a real problem. And I'm finding it too common that reports supplied on traffic supply, they give you averages. And the problem is that averages are also not the prescribed methodology for the Transport Commissioner expectations. Where I'm up to. And as a council, we need to adhere to a consistent application of the guidelines, and the reports we use display the attention to this detail. Now, having said that, I have also been impressed with the change to some data collection methods, namely the recent survey data, which is more collaborative, more open-ended and not so firmly prescribed. But we need to be vigilant, and we need to continue to push for good data so we can make great decisions for the council. Equally, one-to-one consultations need to be documented and accountable for an equally professional standard, where the questions asked are consistent, the feedback supplied is recorded and signed by the participant to ensure integrity of process. And pre-trial data, it needs to exist, and I want to see it established and materially sufficient prior to trial starting.
Alderman Bloomfield.
And finally, I'll point out that the administration's reply is that they are satisfied that this will not create additional work or cost to the council to supply this. So therefore, supporting this motion is a step towards stronger data integrity and overall good governance. And I would recommend that we all consider this as something to do.
Discussion. Councillor Posselt.
My question to Alderman Bloomfield. Is your motion pertaining to more than just the Collins Street trial? Are you asking for a global change in how we do things, or is this only related to Collins Street?
I actually specified that large projects. It happens to be Collins Street, I would suggest at this point in time, but it would be good to actually put an overall governance to this. I believe there have been some examples here with Collins Street, correct?
So, sorry, can I just clarify? The notice of motion is titled Methodology Data on Collins Street Trial, and it talks specifically about Collins Street Trial in the first sentence. Is this motion related to the Collins Street Trial, or is it related to the global governance of data? Which one is it?
Well, we can make it the Collins Street Tactical Bicycle Infrastructure Proposal as the trial and see if we can improve our outcomes.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Alderman Louise Bloomfield. The motion element A and B states the data collection plans considered meet Transport Commission directives. My question is, what do you mean by data collection plans considered meet Transport Commission directives? Where is it, and can you refer to it, please?
I have some of them here. There is actually an entire set of guidelines that the Transport Commissioner refers to on a regular basis. and in fact you'll find that in the actual part with the administration response, they were actually going to supply us such as part with points 1A and B. So there is an entire series of material that do that. What I'm trying to do is make sure that when we actually do this work, that we are not in fact creating, we're not creating process that's outside the expectation. So it means the way we collect our data is according to their recommended process, and the way we collate the data is according to their recommended process. Now I only have page 29 here, but there's an entire book which I don't have access to.
I think...
Just a follow-up question.
Councillor Dutt is still in.
There was a mention in the report that we could collect the Transport Commission direction. Now, in that, I don't see any reference to data collection with regards to Transport Commission directive. So I would appreciate, which particular clause or criteria Alderman Bloomfield is referring to, so I'm in a better position.
Okay, there is an actual example that I have through here, where, for instance, I don't think it's got a direct quote for the actual, what have we got here? I have multiple reports and things from traffic engineers, and where is it?
Do you want to take that one on notice?
Well, look, there are things where there's best practice benchmark, and that's where I've already replied with the, section 29. There was also that when you look at looking at traffic flow, that you should not use an average, that you should be looking at the top 85% or of the traffic flow, i.e. you only measure as what the peak capacity is, you do not do an average. That was also a directive which I don't have the page number, but those are the types of things that were consistent. As I said, when we are supplied by a full set of these, I'm sure I'll be able to give you much information on that.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. Can I, through you, ask the question to the appropriate director? Is it possible to comment with regards to this Transport Commission directive's data collection, and what is the history and the role of the Transport Commission?
Mr. Noy or Mr. Vidal?
Hi, through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, so backdrop to the Transport Commission. So the Traffic Act 1925, 9 years ago, was an Act of Parliament, so it's been in place since then. Up until 2014, the state government had a role within the government, the Transport Commissioner role, had their own office, own staff that would actually sign off and provide advice for all road managers across Tasmania, including local governments. In 2014, under a restructure, a direction was given from the Transport Commission at the time to provide road managers, including local governments, to sign off, those with the appropriate qualifications, to sign off on the appropriate treatments on our roads. That is things like line marking, signs, parking signs, things like that. This was meant to be done then in accordance with Australian standards, including guidelines and other things like that. So that's the sort of potted history to that. Does that answer the question? Yep.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
And I think in 2014, Mr. Vidal, sorry, just a supplementary, they also delegated pedestrian crossings to councils for the first time, which was a bit of a breakthrough.
That's correct, through your lobby. That's correct, yeah. The only two at the time, and they're still within the Transport Commission's function, are traffic signals and speed limits.
Yeah, right.
So everything else now sits, and the zebra crossings was the most recent one to actually get handed over, but everything else is regulated or sort of signed off under that direction by us as the transport area within council.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Mr Vidal for providing us with that excellent history. 1924, the Model T was still in production for a further 3 years, the very first production car ever produced in the world. I don't think that the guidelines in 1924 fit the purpose in 2024, but I think the bigger question here is that we're getting into the territory of experts. None of us are experts other than in the fields in which we are indeed trained and experts. In my case, ambulance, there's lawyers, there's various people around the table that have expertise in their fields. One of the key things that you do as an expert practitioner of any discipline is interpret data and apply guidelines. Now, you apply guidelines with discretion and with years of experience, of training and of qualifications. A guideline is exactly that. It is a guide. It is not a protocol. It must not be followed at all times. There are times when the guideline and the guideline book need to be thrown out the window. Now, I have a great deal of faith in the mobility team here at the City of Hobart. They are appropriately credentialed and experienced to interpret guidelines and, as per the 2014 directive, approve and sign off on the various treatments to ensure that they are indeed compliant with OST roads. Now, not all data point collection advice, not all car parks are the same. There is a whole range of factors that influence the application of any decision, and to just say that it must follow a directive regardless of if it's Collins Street in Hobart or Pitt Street in Sydney is at face value a ridiculous notion, because they're completely different things. And so for me, this motion really undermines the expertise of our staff. I think that it probably makes them feel a little bit devalued, because they are the ones that can interpret the data and produce the best results with their experience and their training. I think that this work is already being done as part of the Collins Street trial, and that this will come as point 2 in the discussion states, that the methodology of data collection and compilation of information will be provided as part of the report to Council, where approval of the detailed design is sought. So it was coming anyway. And what this doesn't need to be is a motion, a notice of motion. We have all sorts of conversations with our CEO, with our directors, we have workshops, we have many different avenues to raise concerns or to ask for different data points if you're concerned about some data, or maybe you want some more information. A simple EM request or an email to the CEO to say, hey, I'm a little bit concerned about this. Do you have the data to help me make up my mind which way I need to go with the decision? Generally speaking, the organisation will provide that to you. I don't think a notice of motion is required. I think the work is already being done, and I think that it undermines and devalues the staff, of which I have the greatest faith to deliver these projects compliantly and to best practice standards.
Further discussion, Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, Lord Mayor. Financial implications in respect of providing this report. There are no financial implications expected with this motion. One of us could even come to questions without notice at the end of the meeting and ask the question, and we're going to get the same answer. So really, I also sort of read in regards to the discussion. It said current Transport Commission directions can be provided to elected members. So the elected member wants to bring it as a notice of motion. It's not the first notice of motion elected member has brought to this chamber in the last 2 years that someone could have just called it the CEO. Look, as far as I'm concerned, I can't see anything detrimental in this at all whatsoever. I've read it. There's some very good points that are raised. If anything, it highlights maybe that we should have been provided information prior to moving forward with the decision that we've made to go down the track of Collins Street or any other bikeway. I'm going to support the motion because I can't see anything detrimental about it. We've spent more time. Councillor Harvey was talking about a moment ago. We spent nearly more time on this motion here than we have on others. And like, I wasn't going to get up and speak, but you know, when you listen to debate, sometimes it gets to the point where I go, I have to get up and say something. So you know, let's just sometimes let things fly, let things go. Then I don't have to get up.
Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, I'm going to take you all back to 2012. Yarn-Gal report.
No. Don't, please.
And it's progressed, you know, 12 years later, here we are. But we're not talking about whether we have a bike lane or not. We're talking about the design. So it's been decided that there's going to be bike lanes or a bike lane or 2 bike lanes or whatever they are, you know, in Collins Street. And now we're out for community engagement to decide on the bike lanes. Not necessarily how many bikes are riding up and down the street, because all that work's been done previously. What we're talking about now is the specific design. And the problem we have is that there's 59 car parks that will be removed from the street. We heard today, was it on the radio? Anyway, about, oh that's right, no, it was questions at the start of the hour, or start of the session, talking about the parking for disabled access, and there's going to be more, probably. It's still being thoroughly worked out. So I don't need more data. What I need is for the process to continue and for the final report on the design of the street to come to us. So whether or not there's X number of bikes riding up and down or going to or fro, not the point. We're designing the project. That's the stage we're at. So I don't need all this extra data. And like Councillor Prasad said, I trust in the officers. If we challenge the officers all the time, then what's the point in having them? We might as well just make it up ourselves. And you do know that 75% of data is made up on the spot. And I'm sure that we're going to hear some data, coming that has no value because it's not done through a proper process that can be analysed. And our staff are responsible for doing that work, not us. So I don't need to support this tonight because I'm confident that a thorough report will come to us in the fullness of time. Or when will it come? In the next few weeks or so, through you, Chair, Lord Mayor? When will the report
We're still working on it. So ironically, some data that we're waiting on and some further engagement. So look, I couldn't hand on heart say exactly when it will come back.
Yeah, but it's an ongoing process, and more data is being, gathered by professional staff through proper processes that will be, peer reviewed, I gather, because they'll all be passing it around through a network of people who have the experience. So I'm confident we will get a thorough report when it comes. We don't need additional notices of motion pushing officers to do more when most of that work will probably come to us anyway. It will come to us anyway. So I'm comfortable with the process to date, and I don't need to support extra notices of motion.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I reserve my right to speak, but I just had 2 questions with regards to the motion, to the relevant individual. The motion says, in particular, information that gives elected members understanding that in relation to methodology of data collection and compilation of information for the Collins Street bike trial, the data collected met Transport Commission directives. So did it? For the Collins Street bike trial?
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, so all the data collected to date and that we'll continue to do is in accordance with the Australian standards, Australian Guides of Traffic Management and other relevant DSG or state government guidelines.
The answer to A is yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. The next question is, again, understanding that, in relation to methodology of data collection and compilation of information for the Collins Street bike trial, B, the final compilation of data conclusions met Transport Commission directives. Did it?
Yes, yeah, it's all in accordance with those guidelines, those directives, yes.
So B is also yes.
B is yes.
Thank you very much.
Further discussion? Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I guess, look, I'll be very brief. I think we need to, like, sometimes I'm unsure about things and I might ask a question, pick up the phone, or I might put in a motion. And I read the officer's response here. I've just listened to some direct responses, so I'm reasonably confident about what the answer will be were we to pass this motion. But, you know, I think there does need to be that ability to bring motions to the table. And sometimes members will do it because they themselves want certainty. Sometimes they might. You know, sometimes we do act on behalf of community groups and representatives, and, you know, it's a bit like the ability to call something into planning. You know, you can have a neighbour from hell who is you know, and then the person's like, I don't want to be seen to put one in against, can you please call it in, so that can be discussed. You know, sometimes these abilities exist, and I think that, you know, in this case, you know, if I read the rationale, which is giving me the reason as to why Alderman Bluefield's brought this forward, you know, I think she's saying it's essential we have access to relevant, reliable and current data. Well, that's fine, and I look at the administrative response, and they haven't flagged to me anything that's overly sort of controversial or in their discussion, or as Alderman Zuko pointed out, in the financial implications. So, look, as a sort of default position, I think I'd have no evidence that this motion seeks to sort of do any harm, and whether it gives comfort to Alderman Bluefield or potentially to people that Alderman Bluefield has wanted her to put this motion forward and ask it, I don't see any reason not to support it, albeit some people might think it's duplication or whatever. And so, look, you know, whether this discussion in and of itself may have been a valuable process for members. So, look, I don't see anything bad, evil, wrong, etc. with this motion. I definitely haven't seen any red flags raised in the administrative response. And when I read the rationale as to why Alderman Bluefield's put this forward, and when I listened to her contribution at the start when she introduced the item, I think it's coming from a place where she is just wanting a very high standard. So, you know, I'm not sort of here to litigate her arguments yes or no, but I can't see anything detrimental if we were to pass this. So, look, with that in mind, I respect the rights of members to bring forward motions, and when they do bring forward motions, unless we have a strong reason not to support them, my default would be to support my fellow members around the table. Thanks.
Councillor Elliott, is up first.
Thank you. So I support the motion predominantly because I support the high-level themes that this one is drilling down into, and I think from discussions I've had around the issue on Collins Street, I disagree that all the work's been done around data. I've had meetings with the director and officers and actually been quite taken aback about the lack of data that is out there. We'll talk more about that in the Clearways motion, but all the work and all the data has not been done. I do strongly disagree with that. And we as elected members are, again, on the Collins Street example, but the principles here around the need to have thorough, reliable data, impartial data, relevant data and data clarity, that obviously applies to so many different things, and I've experienced issues with that across a number of settings. But the changes we're embarking on Collins Street are big changes, and that's why I think you'll find that we are eager and keen to have data, because the changes need to be justified. For example, my understanding is we don't actually have, the only figures on Collins Street that we have of the number of users relate to the top intersection of Collins and Mole. There's nothing further down into the city apart from a couple of hours of casual observation. We'll talk more about that in the later motion. I do have issues with, it can feel like sometimes the reports from a data perspective can be a bit undercooked. It could be that there isn't felt the need to do it because perhaps the motion, there's an awareness that the motion itself has the numbers around the room to pass without that. But for those of us who are on the fence or unsure about the motion, we can't have that being skipped over. Also, when external peer reviews do happen of information and they say there are some issues and room for improvement, I think we need to take that on board and realise that things aren't as rosy as some might be painting when it comes to our data collection and presentation as well. And when it comes to accessing information, I have struggles with that, and I will ask a question later on around our access to information policy that's in development. But I have, on this issue, I've asked for example, all feedback that the council's received to date from the businesses, and I had a week-long delay because I was told it would come in an engagement report, whereas I think we need to shift that culture that when an elected member asks for information and they're legally entitled to it, they don't have a conflict, it's relevant to the agenda, please just provide the information, because we have a lot of trust building to do in that space, and it's really important for us because, as I said, it comes back to big changes require evidence, especially in the issue of Collins Street, where there's going to be, in my opinion, and in the experience we've already seen in North Hobart, I think it'll be another situation just like North Hobart, probably with the posters up with elected members' faces in them. But we're going to see impact from this decision, which is why a handful of us are looking at this so thoroughly and so determined for the data we need to inform the decision.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have another question through you. With regards to data collection, the question is, what is the difference between data collection per se and vision validation? Because that's a concept that I've heard. And how does it relate to Collins Streets?
Do you follow the question?
Thank you, through you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, the concept of vision validates, it's probably been around for the last sort of 15, 20 years in transport planning. So it's more around looking at obviously what's a vision for a particular transport project, and then looking for rationale whether that project stacks up. So that's the logic there. It's a bit of a move away from the notion of prediction and provide, which is the traditional transport planning methodology, which is past performance is a predictor of future use. So you see an example of that is the classic example in transport planning is the Houston motorways. I don't know if you've seen photos of Houston spaghetti motorways where some of them are 12, 15, 18 lanes wide. The prediction and provide model is it's growing, we need to provide more road space, so they provide more road space, so that road space then is then used up. So that's the sort of the historical example. So that's sort of, does that answer your question?
Thank you so much. Now, with regards to this motion, I think it has all good intentions, and no one doubts that. And it is the right of every elected member to bring a motion. So I am glad that Alderman Bloomfield has brought this motion for us to debate. It has taken us longer than the budget item. And obviously, it's only natural, isn't it? This is the first time we're debating it. With the budget item, we remember we had 3 or 4 weeks of it, hours of it. We even went out of sight and spent hours on it. So, we've already got all that information, so it was very easy for us. Even the North Hobart one, we don't have to go through the process, but something new comes in as a motion. That's a different issue. We haven't debated this. We haven't heard the different views. So thank you for bringing it. Point number 2, I understand from the motions and the elements of A to E, there is the issue of data collection. Now, I'm having difficulty with this to support, because the data collection plans considered ought to meet the Transport Commission directives. And the Commission directive simply looks at traffic design signs and signals. So I can't find that particular criteria that I am to really check this out. And then the other elements of the motion concentrates on methodology. So again, I am quite confident with the response from the administration that this is catered for. They will provide that evidence to us later on. And with regards to data collection, they provided me sufficient answers to accept their position as to why they have gone down this particular path, and there is no need for this. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Lord Mayor, there was a question raised.
Spoken.
No, it's a question to the CEO.
Provision of information with regard to this project. Are we entitled to information, or should we wait for the report? Receiving information in an ongoing way undermines, I think, the opportunity to keep editing that report. So while Councillor Elliott's requested information, should any information that goes to one go to all, and should we not be patient and wait for the final report?
Yeah, so look, if the information is requested, the council staff will typically provide it. That doesn't mean we're stopping work with respect to the analysis and the further collection of data and the analysis. The second part to that is whether it should be provided to all. Well, clearly that's something we can do. We haven't done in this occasion. It was requested specifically by Councillor Elliott in this occasion. So, but we certainly can.
Yeah.
Just a question, please. Do I have, and all elected members have a right under the Local Government Act, I think it's section 28, to access to information? And is there a requirement to be patient before accessing that?
So I think I just answered that to say, we typically do provide it, well, in this case, it was just information in respect of the engagement that the council was receiving, or the correspondence that we were receiving. So it was appropriate to be provided, but that doesn't, like you said, there's still work on analysis and compilation and all of that work which we've been debating now in respect of the data. So, but again, the information still should be provided.
Doesn't preclude you from asking for it.
Okay, let's Councillor Sherlock. Sorry, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So I just wanted to say a few things after I've asked my question. And I wanted to first start off by thanking Alderman Bloomfield for bringing this particular motion. I think it's one that, as Councillor Coates has pointed out, we are entitled to bring motions as we please. We can bring motions to the table on behalf of community members, or because we also choose to bring them. But I think it's also really important that when a motion does come, say for example we had, I put forward the breastfeeding motion the last council, and I know Councillor Coates voted against it, and he's entitled to do so. And it's based on the information that you're provided, and you make your own decision. And I think rightly, in the same way, all of us around this table, we will all make our own decision. So thank you very much, Alderman Bloomfield, for bringing this. And it's not detrimental in any way, and I respect your right to bring it. But I also respect, of course, everybody's right around the table to put forward their opinions. And I'm going to put forward mine based on the answers that I received. So when we look at this particular motion, A and B has already been done. So what does that mean for me? What that means for me is that A and B are now invalid. It invalidates that aspect because it's already been done. So now we look at C to E, and if we look at C to E of the motion and we go down to what has been provided in the administrative response, it's the methodology of data collection and compilation of information will be provided as part of the report. They're in the process of doing it. Okay, sure. I know from research that I do from various different things that data collection takes some time. Compiling it takes some time. Analysing it takes some time. Drawing out the relevant bits and pieces as part of a question that you're answering takes a lot of time. So I understand that that has been done, and it is there in the process right now. And the overview of the planned monitoring for pre-trial, and I actually said this in the May meeting, the ongoing monitoring and evaluation both pre and post installation is planned, and there were particular actual metrics that were part of that report. And I discussed this at our May meeting, but I think it's pertinent that I say it once again, because it highlights the fact that C2 through to E is also potentially, in my opinion, invalid. And those are the number of bike and micro-mobility riders, diversity of users targeting an increase in proportion of women and children in type of bicycles, road bikes, cargo bikes, mountain bikes, indicating the perceived safety and accessibility of the infrastructure. Number 3, increased access for people walking, targeting increases in people crossing mid-block, indicating perceived safety, road safety, targeting reduced vehicle speeds. I mean, it's up to point 7 there, you can read it yourself. And will take the opportunity not to bore you with it, but it is contained there. So yes, it appears to me, from the information that I've received, while it's a beautiful motion in terms of maybe understanding from various different perspectives, it's already been done. A, B, C, D and E is either done, or it is in train, or it has already been provided to us in the May report. So we can't really, say that we haven't really made our decision, you the individual elected member, without taking everything into consideration. I've tried not to skip things over when I make my particular decision, and I do agree with Councillor Elliott. If an elected member does ask for information, certainly you should be provided with it, and I am adequately satisfied that I've been provided the information that I needed to make my decision for this particular motion. Yes, my face was one of the individuals' faces on the poster in North Hobart. Happy for my face to be on a poster again, has been indicated by Councillor Elliott, because we all make decisions. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kelly?
I really don't know what the hoo-ha is here about this. It's a pretty innocuous sort of motion. Details require data. I mean, design concepts require data. If we need it, we can ask for it. If it must be there, what's the big problem giving it to us? So trust but verify, I say. So I will support this motion tonight. Thank you.
There's no further discussion. Councillor Bloomfield, Alderman Bloomfield, would you like to sum up? You've got 3 minutes.
I have to say I'm quite concerned that apparently this council thinks it's okay to ignore guidelines. Guidelines set by the Traffic Commissioner. Geez, I wonder how many other councils in Australia do that. I don't think we should be.
I think that's misinformation. Guidelines are being adhered to.
Yeah, I think that was...
They were not.
Alderman Bloomfield, I think that was a bit of an unfair slur against your colleagues, that we don't... There was no suggestion...
Councillor Posselt that it was perfectly okay and fair at any time we want to ignore guidelines.
It's not, I don't think I heard
Point
that.
of order by personal explanation, please.
Look,
Hang on, mine's first.
No, I'm just going to ask Alderman Bloomfield to withdraw the suggestion that that councillors have said they don't stick with guidelines, because I think it was an unfair...
Well, what is very clear to me is that guidelines have very little value in this room. That should be far more appropriate, surely.
That's not true either.
No, well, I think it is a bit unfair, but it's probably not, unfortunately, offensive. But it's certainly an unfair comment.
Point out too, with what Councillor Elliott had pointed out, the pre-trial data for Collins Street is almost non-existent, and I would also question whether the bicycle network data would actually meet any criteria for survey results, given that they pre-announce, they encourage, and they have 50 points of data collection where any individual could actually do it 15 times and be added to the numbers.
Causing offence to the bicycle network.
Again, I'm sorry.
Give us a
Richard.
Point of order. I'll make a... Excuse me, can I call everyone to order? I am going to allow Alderman Bloomfield's comment. It is her opinion. It's not offensive, as is described by the Local Government Act. I'm sure the Bicycle Network doesn't like or agree with Alderman Bloomfield's opinion, but it's a fairly basic opinion rather than something that's offensive as such.
Having studied market research at University of Tasmania, I can promise you that that was certainly not meeting the requirements of market research. That is the basis of my position. So you talk about expert positions.
No, through me, please, Alderman Bloomfield.
So realistically, if we do not value data and we cannot read the data, which I also pointed out that you cannot read size, was it 0.4 font reasonably, and then you supply reports that you cannot read, so therefore we're clearly not reading them to make a decision, is a concern. And I'm trying to make sure the reports are brought to a standard, and including the standard by the Traffic Commissioner, including standard ordinary results, so that if I pick up a report, I can read it and I can ascertain the numbers I agree with. It is not about anything further than that, and this is all this motion is here to do, is to ensure that we have good data, which will then allow us to make good results from good governance, and to not support a motion that merely does that, no more, nothing further. I'm not trying to push the decision one way or the other for the bike lanes at all. I'm simply saying I want to know that when we make this decision, it's a good one, and it's based on real data, not any other reason or any other factional stuff that appears that we seem to be kind of attracting. It's just not right.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Zuko, Elliott, Coates, Bloomfield, Kelly. That's it.
Against.
Kinsos, Loberger, Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
That's lost. So before we move on to item 24, which is Councillor Coates' motion, I'm going to propose, it's 8 o'clock, we do need a break. We need a meal and toilet break. So I propose that we reconvene at 8:20, and I'll adjourn the meeting.